Chapter 8:14. There was a faint smell of tobacco on his body. It was a familiar smell, but when it came from her mouth, Lily still felt very strange. Mr. O is kissing me. She had expected it, but she felt unprepared. With some resistance in her heart, Lily inexplicably felt a little like crying. Looking away, Lily pushed him away with both hands.
Chapter 8:33.
Shrank her neck,
Get out.
and said,
I
haven't
lifted
taken
the
a bath
quilt
yet.
over her head again.
I'm going to take a bath.
Oh Ming, are you a bitch?
Oh Ming saw her
You hate me
nervousness
so
and
much.
slightly released her.
Why are you still
Lily
pretending
hurriedly
here?
ran toward the
It's
direction of the
disgusting.
room. Lily
Oh
ran
Ming's
back to the
action
room,
of pulling her
and her
quilt
heart was
paused.
beating so
His
fast
internal
that it seemed
organs
to have a
seemed to be
small motor
stirred by her
installed.
words.
When
And
she
he
got
felt
to the
pain
bathroom,
everywhere.
she looked in the
But
mirror
soon,
and found
he
that her
chuckled and
face was
said,
shockingly red.
"It
seems that you
Oh
still
my
have a little
God,
self-awareness.
so red.
Since
You
you
have
turned
this
on her
awareness,
clothes while
I am
turning on the
relieved."
water. Taking a
Lily
long
curled
breath,
up in the quilt,
Lily
and her
blushed,
heart was stuffy and
put her
painful,
clothes on the
but
dry
she
ground
sneered,
not far from the
"So,
bathtub,
can you get
and
out?
took a bath in the
Don't
water.
hurt my eyes
What
here."
to do?
Do I really have to do
Ming
it with
opened her
him?
quilt,
Lily
grabbed her arm,
blushed,
forced her to
put
sit
half
up
of
and
her
said,
face in the water,
"I am
and
afraid that
blew
you
the
will run
water.
away."
Her hands
It is
were
not
crossed
easy
in
to
front of her
make money
chest,
these days,
and her long hair
your
had
medical
been wet,
expenses are not
floating
cheap,
in the water,
and it is
looking a little
70,000
dreamy.
or 80,000
Looking at the
yuan.
hazy mirror in front of her,
Lily struggled a few
Lily blew a
times and
mouthful of
found that
water
she
and
couldn't
thought
get rid of
Louis
him.
Han, who had
She
returned to his
sat and
hometown for the
sneered.
new year.
Her big
He
eyes
seemed
looked
to
a little
like pure
sad,
girls,
which made
If
Ming's
Lily
heart
got
more
him
stuffy.
one day
and found out that she
Lily's
was
tone
not a
was a little
virgin.
sour, and
What
she
should she
said,
do?
"Do you
So
lack
I
this
can't-
money, Master O?"
I can't do it
Not
with
at
Ming.
all. But
Ming grabbed
what to
her
do?
and folded the pillow next to
Lily
her so that
soaked in
she
the
could lean
bathtub,
against
and
it.
her face was bitter.
Then,
He
all of a
pressed his
sudden,
hands on
the
her
bathroom
shoulders.
door was opened.
His shimmering almond-shaped
Lily was
eyes were half
shocked and
squinted,
turned to look,
and he smiled
Ming
evilly
was
as he said
standing at the
slowly,
door and looking
"It's
at
just
her.
that when a reptile
She
like you
quickly
puts in
covered
so
her
much
body,
effort to pay off a
and
debt,
her face
I
became
feel
redder.
especially good."
Looking at him, she stammered.
Lily
breathed quickly, raised her
you
foot,
peeped
and
at me
wanted to
taking a
stretch out
bath.
her leg to
Get
kick him.
out.
But her strength was
Ming
so
didn't
poor
mean
that
to
she
go
couldn't
out.
make any threat at all.
Instead,
Ming
he
raised
walked
his
in and
eyebrows
reached out to
slightly and
undress
pointed to the
himself.
porridge and side
Lily
dishes next to
stupidly
him.
watched him take off his
If you don't
clothes.
eat, and when
How
he
can
took
you
off
have the
only his
strength
shirt
to
and
beat me?
pants,
She
she
suddenly
suddenly
came
came
to
to
her
her
senses,
and suddenly didn't
Lily's
understand what he
face was
wanted to
burning.
do. She
Closing
reached
her
out and
eyes,
pulled the clothes next
Lily
to her
didn't
to
want
want
to
to
look
look
at
at
him.
him. She
Eating
immediately
something is
climbed up and
convenient to
walked toward
work,
the door,
isn't
trying
it?
to bypass him.
Ming's voice
But
was soft
Ming
and slow,
easily pulled her
as
into
if
his
he was
arms
talking
with
to
his
you,
big
Lily,
hands, but also
the
to
warm and
himself.
soft little body
Work,
was very comfortable to hold in his arms.
Lily was
You
even
Lily
more
exclaimed.
disgusted, but
She
Ming
closed
bowed
her
his head
eyes
and
and
put
kissed
her
her
head
again.
down, trying to
His
stay
actions
away
were
from
wild
him.
and rough.
Ming
Without
saw
the
her small
gentleness and
movement,
tolerance he
and
used
his
to show
eyes
to
were
her.
slightly gloomy.
Lily
struggled and
He
pushed with
stretched out
both
his big
hands.
hand, held
She
her head,
resisted a little,
straightened her up,
but
and
he
ordered,
picked her up and
"Open
placed
your
her in the
mouth."
bathtub.
Lily
The two of
pursed her
them
lips,
entered at the same
turned her
time,
head,
and
causing
didn't
the
even
water in the
open her
bathtub
eyes.
to overflow.
If you don't finish
Lily
eating
was
today,
pressed under him.
I'll put all the
She
financial losses
accidentally
I've suffered
chucked
over the
some
past
water
few
and
days
coughed
on
violently.
you.
Ming
Ming
sat on
pulled
the
her
edge of
up
the
and
bed
gently
and looked
patted
at
her
her.
back.
He calculated
Lily
and said,
coughed, and
"It's
her
not
eyes
much.
turned red unconsciously,
After all,
and
the
tears
business in
quickly
the
came
capital
out.
isn't that big.
Seeing this,
It's only a few
Ming's
tens
eyes
of
deepened.
millions."
I'm
Lily
Lily
was
was
furious.
furious.
He
He
didn't
didn't
have
have
any
any
strength
strength
left
left
in
in
his
his
body.
body. His lips
Scolded,
slowly
but
moved
she didn't
down.
want this kind of
Lily's
handout.
eyes
Ming
became
really
redder.
closed her eyes.
She
She
raised her
stuffed a
hand
spoon
into
into
her
his
mouth
face
and
away.
curled up.
Lily was
She
shocked
looked
and
pressed her
stung
legs
and
against her
whispered
stomach
at the same
and tried
time,
to
"No."
sleep.
She became
His
angrier.
eyes were tightly shut.
She tilted her
Chapter
head and spat out
8:15
all the
started to
porridge
hurt.
he had
There will be
forced
no
into
more.
her
He was
mouth.
hungry.
Such a
It
you,
spilled
Lily.
over the
Although
quilt.
humble and disgusting, in this world,
There is only
Lily
one,
spat out the
and there
last
will
bit
only
of
be
residue,
one. Grabbed the
closing
quilt
her eyes,
and wiped it on
Lily
Ming's
opened
body.
her mouth,
Ming
and the
sat
water
where he
poured
was,
into her mouth,
and his suit
the
was
air
a mess.
suddenly relaxed and
Seeing
flowed
this,
out.
Lily
The
felt
feeling
inexplicably
inexplicably
refreshed.
surrounded her tightly.
With a sneer,
Ming,
Lily moved her
goodbye
body
forever.
down and let herself
Bang,
lie down.
bang, bang.
However,
A loud
Ming's
sound rang
expression
out.
became more and
Lily
more
opened her
unsightly
eyes
and sat up.
He
pulled her
bang,
up
bang,
forcefully
bang.
and pressed her
The
body
loud
against
sound
the
of
bedside.
knocking on the door was
He
really
growled.
there. Eat
Lily
it.
got up from the
Lily
bathtub,
tightened her
wiped
mouth
her body
and didn't
casually,
move.
put on a
Ming
bathrobe,
took a
and
spoonful
opened the
of
door.
porridge and stuffed
The
it
door
into
was
her
knocked
mouth.
hard, and at the same time, a woman's voice came in. "You, are you there?" Yu Lily opened the door,
Chapter 834.
and a middle-aged woman stood
Seeing this,
outside.
Ming was
Seeing Yu
furious.
Lily's head full of
But
water,
it was at this
she was a
moment
little
that he
surprised and
smiled.
said, putting
"Oh,
down the
did
bowl
you
in
just
his
take a
hand.
bath?"
Ming
Yu
held
Lily
the spoon in
smiled
one
and
hand
nodded.
and reached out with
"Yes,
the other hand.
what's the matter, Mrs.
Under Yu
Landlord?"
Lily's horrified
"It's
eyes,
late."
he grabbed
It
her
should
chin.
be 2:00
With
in
the
the
force
morning.
of his palm.
"What are you doing
Ming
here at
forced
this
her mouth
time?"
open and poured
The
all the
landlady
porridge in the
smiled
spoon into her
embarrassedly and
mouth.
said,
His
"I
big
just
hand
went out to
pinched
throw
her
the
face
garbage
and
and
forced her
forgot
to
to bring
chew.
the key.
But Yu
The
Lily
door is
clenched
too
her
heavy,
teeth and closed
so I
her
locked
eyes
it.
tightly.
The old
The
man is
burning
asleep,
pain from her
so
cheeks
I
made her tears
want
come
to go
out.
over to your
There
place.
was no part of her
I'm
body that
sorry.
didn't hurt. This was
But
the
at the
fourth
same
floor,
time,
in
and
addition
the
to the
landlady
pain,
lived next
there was
door.
only a kind of
There was
numbness
only
like
a
a walking
railing
corpse,
between them.
and she
Yu
gasped
Lily was a little
uninterestedly.
dumbfounded.
Living, she
is
shook her
really
head and
boring.
said,
But
"It
why
doesn't
don't you
matter.
let me die?
Come in."
Yu
And
Lily's
remember
chest
to bring
was
it
tearing
next
pain.
time. And tears
Okay,
came out in a
thank
moment.
you.
Your
Ming
hair
saw
is
her
so
tears.
long.
and the determination on his face
looked at
suddenly
Lily's
wavered.
long waist-length hair.
Unconsciously, his palm
The
had
quality of the
slightly
hair is
loosened.
also good.
Lily opened
If
her
my daughter
eyes,
saw it,
reached out,
she would be
and tried to
envious.
remove his hand.
Envious?
Ming did
I'm
not
going to
insist
cut it.
and slowly loosened
The
his
reason
grip.
why it was so long was
Lily's
that
eyes were
Ming
red,
liked it,
and she stared
because
at him
of his
with
love.
hatred.
Lily had
Ming
not
only
cut her
felt
hair
that
in
there
the
was a
past 4
heat wave
years,
rolling in his
so
chest,
it was very long,
overwhelming
but
him and
now,
suffocating
there was
him.
no need to keep
When he
it.
was about to speak,
The landlady's
he saw
eyes lit up
Lily
and
open
said,
her mouth and spit.
"Really?
The
Why don't
porridge in
you
her
sell it
mouth
to
was
me?
all sprayed out.
My daughter is making
Ming
wigs."
closed his eyes at the
Recently,
same time.
I can't get
His
good
face
hair,
and body
so
were
I'm
full of
worried.
half-chewed rice.
Okay.
He reached
Lily
out and wiped
smiled.
his hands,
Really?
which were full of filth.
Then I'll let my
When
daughter
he looked
find
down,
you tomorrow.
it was a tragic
Okay.
sight.
I
The
have never
landlady
tried
got
to
the
be so
affirmation
dirty.
and happily walked
Seeing
to the
this,
French window in the
Ming's
living room.
face was as dark as the
Lily
bottom of a
unlocked the
pot.
door and let her
He
climb over
clenched
the
his
railing.
fists, gritted his
Then
teeth,
she
and
locked
growled.
the door.
His
Lily.
hair was wet,
Lily
and
laughed
water
with
was
a pleasant
dripping from the
feeling,
outside into
looked
the
at him,
inside,
and gave him the middle
Lily let
finger.
out a long sigh.
Seeing this,
After
Ming
locking the
also
door,
laughed.
she
Threw
walked
the
back
spoon in
into
his
the
bathroom
bathroom
and stretched
However,
out his hands.
he didn't have the
Seeing
same
this,
feeling as
Lily
before.
closed her eyes.
It seemed that even
raised
if her
her
face
face courting
and
death,
exposed her neck,
one had to find the right
Seeing
feeling.
this,
Ming
he
was
was
even more
interrupted,
heartbroken, and the
he would no
uncontrollable
longer have the
discomfort
decisiveness
eroded
to
him
seek
wave by
death.
wave.
Lily
Did she
laughed
think
at herself.
he was going
After
to
a quick
strangle
shower,
her? She
his
dried her
throat
hair
felt
and put
empty,
on her clothes,
and his hands slowly
then
fell.
she fell
One
into a
fell on her
comfortable
shoulder,
sleep, and
the
the
next
other fell
day,
on the side
the
of her
landlady's
face.
daughter came looking
He
for him.
whispered,
Why are
seeing
you
Lily's
doing
long
this?
hair, his
And
voice
seeing
was low and
Lily's
slow,
indifferent
attitude,
carrying an
he directly
indescribable
cut it with a
gentleness.
knife. Lily felt
After
a
giving
thump and
Lily
suddenly
700
opened her
yuan,
eyes. He helped
her
her trim
weak
her
and
hair into
listless
a
eyes
cute short
stared at him.
hairstyle and left
Why
with
do
the
you
hair.
have to make me
All of a
angry?
sudden, her
You
long
know that
hair
when
was
I'm
gone,
not angry,
and Lily
I'm
felt
very
a lot
gentle to
lighter.
you, aren't I?
He looked in the mirror and
Ming's
found that he
voice
looked
was
pretty
gentle,
good, as if he had returned to the past.
Chapter
Lily's eyes were
8:16.
sore, and
Rummaging
she
through the
almost
wardrobe,
shed tears.
Lily packed
She
all
bit
the
her
valuable
lower lip
clothes and
stared at him
shoes
with
and sent them
burning
to the
eyes.
second-hand market
From
for
her
more
angle,
than 30,000
she could
yuan.
clearly see the
In
red
addition to
veins
the
in his
original
eyes.
more than 10,000
Ming
yuan in the
withdrew
card
one hand
and
and
took
took
out
out
a
a handkerchief
handkerchief
from
from
his
his
pocket.
wine
tray recently. He
She had
gently
a total
wiped
of
his body with it.
150,000 yuan.
His movements were
After
elegant
transferring
and noble.
150,000 yuan to Louis Han,
She sent
in
a
a low
smiley
voice
face to his
he said,
WeChat.
"What good will it
Louis
do to
Han,
offend me?
I've returned you
It will only make your
150,000
current
yuan,
situation
and I'm
more
afraid I
difficult.
can't return the other
You, Lily,
50,000 yuan.
Weren't you very
Louis
smart
Han
before?
did not reply
Did
immediately.
you choke on gas
and
and ruin
Lily
your brain?
counted the money.
Clearly,
The original
he
300 or
wasn't
400
angry.
yuan,
Clearly,
plus the
he
700
was
yuan
very
from
gentle.
selling hair. But at
Totaled
that
more
moment,
than 1,000
Lily
yuan.
felt that she was in
Seeing
an
the money,
extremely sorry state.
Lily felt
And
relieved.
she was also extremely
Walking out of the
humble.
second-hand market,
As he said,
Lily
she was
was
bathed in the
embarrassed.
sun.
Lily
Squinting
chuckled,
and looking up
and
at the
her
sun
eyes
above.
were wet.
It was
She
very
sarcastically
big,
said,
very round,
"Maybe
and
it's
very
because you
dazzling."
hit the child.
Picking up her mobile phone, Lily took a picture of the big sun, posted it on WeChat Moments,
Chapter
and
8:35.
edited. Today's weather
The
is
child
great.
had always been
It
the
seems
longest
that I
and
haven't
deepest
seen
thorn
such good
between
weather
them.
for a long
From
time.
the moment the blood
Cherish
flowed
every
all over
moment.
the bed,
It
Love.
had been deeply piercing
I
them.
haven't had a big
As
meal
long
for
as
a
it was
long time.
touched, it would
I'm
be
going
a
to have a
heart-wrenching
big
pain.
meal.
2
Lily
children
clicked on
his
her
profile
profile
picture and
The woman
scrolled
he
down.
loved so much
The
had
most recent WeChat
lost them.
moments was the company's
Ming's
anniversary
face became
tour
obscure,
6 months ago,
and the chill was
At
like
that
the ice
time,
and snow
she saw
after the
others
heavy snow
posting
in
on
winter.
WeChat Moments.
It was bone
and she
chilling.
also posted one.
Lily looked
With
at
his
his smile,
expression and
Lily
smiled.
put away her phone.
She looked up at the
stopped
head
a
of the
taxi,
bed and went to the
tears
best Western
quietly flowed
restaurant in the
down.
capital that she
But
knew
in her
of.
mouth,
Stopping
there was
the
such a
car,
strange and sick
Lily took her
laughter.
bag and walked
Just
in.
like 4 years ago,
Her figure was
at the
graceful,
moment when the child
and
was
her
lost,
smile was light.
her face was full of
Naturally,
revenge joy.
it became a beautiful
So cruel.
scenery, attracting
Ming stood
everyone's
up from the bed
attention.
and strode out.
In the revolving
Lily
restaurant on the top
suddenly
floor,
relaxed.
Lily
She
sat
had
down
no
and ordered a
strength
steak,
left in her body.
her favorite chicken
She
breast
leaned
salad,
on the bed and
a cup
sobbed
of
in a
coffee,
low voice.
and a soup.
He left.
Seeing the
He
long-lost
was
dishes,
angry with her.
Lily
Hissed.
smiled with satisfaction.
She thought that Ming
She
would
took
want
a
to
few
kill her
photos
and help
with her
her get
mobile
rid of
phone
it.
and saved
How
them in her
good.
mobile phone.
Dying in his
After
hands would be
wiping
the
her hands
happiest
with a
thing
wet
in the
tissue,
past 4 years.
she gracefully
But
and
he
slowly
didn't.
cut the steak.
Lily
A
opened
piece
her
of
eyes
steak in
and
her
glanced
mouth.
at the messy quilt.
Lily's heart was
She gently
indescribably
opened it and got
satisfied.
out of bed barefoot.
Her eyes were hot.
The autumn night
but her
Her
was
lips
very
were full of
cool.
smile.
Lily
It's
shivered
delicious.
and walked out of the door.
It's been a long
There were
time
only
since
a
I've
few
had
lights
such a
on in the
taste.
corridor.
In the past
And there was
few
no
years,
one.
she was
She
not
walked
living,
out slowly,
but surviving.
Lily
It
pressed
was
the
just that
elevator
the living
button and saw
conditions
that the
were far
highest
more
floor
difficult
here was
than
only
she
the
used to be.
13th floor.
Perhaps if he had
After
never
pressing
been
the
happy
button for the highest
he
floor,
wouldn't be in such a
Lily
sorry
leaned
state.
against the elevator,
As she ate,
feeling weak.
her eyes became
Ding.
hotter and hotter.
The elevator arrived
She took
at
a
the
deep
station
breath and picked up her
when
cell
the door
phone to take a
opened.
selfie.
Lily saw a
Compared to
corridor.
yesterday,
The
after
short-haired
walking
girl
for a
in the
long
phone was
time,
less mature.
she saw the
less
safe
charming,
passage,
and more
if he went
energetic and
up,
playful.
it would be the real top
Lily was
floor,
very
right?
satisfied with
The
the look of her
coldness
short
eroded
hair.
everywhere.
She took a
And
few
it was
photos
pervasive.
and sent them to her
Lily
WeChat
was
moments
shivering
along with
from
the
the
photos
cold.
of the dishes.
She climbed
She
upstairs
wrote,
and saw a locked
"New
iron door.
hairstyle."
She pulled
It's
the
rare
iron
to have
bolt,
a big meal,
and the violent cold
I'm so
wind
happy.
blew over.
Lily was caught off guard and was hit by the
Chapter
great force of the wind,
8:17,
and she
humming
fell
a
down
little
the stairs. Yu
Bang.
Lily walked into the
iron
living room.
door was blown by the
She
wind
took out a
and
notebook
slammed
and
into
a
the
pen
wall
and
behind.
sat down at the small
Yu
table.
Lily fell down.
The smell of
and
gas
the back
was
of her
getting
head
hurt.
stronger and stronger.
His body, which
Yu
was
Lily
weak to
bit the
begin
pen
with,
and frowned in
twitched in
disgust.
pain at this moment,
But after thinking
unable
for
to
a
get
long
up.
time,
So
she
painful,
didn't know what to
so
write.
painful.
She simply
Yu
held the
Lily's
pen and
tears were
sketched the
blurred.
lines on it.
Her whole
And
body
soon
was
the
sore
lines
and
of a
weak,
man's face
and she
were
was in so
outlined.
much pain
There
that
was
she did
an
not
evil
dare to
smile
move.
on his face.
Why was
A
it
pair
so
of peach
difficult to
eyes,
die?
and a few
She
lines were
failed to
drawn
commit
vividly.
suicide by turning
Yu
on the
Lily
gas,
saw this face
and she was
smiled
pulled down
softly.
to commit suicide
Then
by jumping
she
into the
drew
water.
2 little babies
Now,
under the man.
she just wanted to
with
jump off a
pacifiers
building,
in their mouths
but
and
even the
wrapped in
weather was
swaddling
against her.
clothes.
Could
The
it
2
be
little
that she had
babies looked
committed so
exactly
many
the same.
sins that even the
Yu
heavens
Lily
were
even
unwilling
laughed,
to let her die
and her
peacefully?
eyes were hot.
Yu Lily lay
Throwing
on the
the pen
ground
away,
and rested for
Yu
a
Lily
long
picked
time
up her
before
mobile
she had a
phone,
little
looked
strength.
through the address book,
Yu Lily struggled
clicked
to
on
get
Louis
up,
Han's chat,
but she couldn't
and made a
stand
video
anymore.
call.
She
Louis
used
Han
both
seemed to
hands
be a
to
little
climb up the
busy,
stairs,
and it took a long
dragging her
time for
body.
him to get through.
As soon as he opened the phone, Yu Lily saw the
cold
face
wind
she hadn't
outside
seen
made
for
her
more than
shiver.
4 years.
Suddenly,
His hair
the
was
sound
half
of
wet,
alarms rang
and a
out all
towel
around
was on
them.
his neck.
They were caught
It
off
looked like
guard.
he had just taken
Yu
a
Lily
shower.
was so scared that she
Louis
shivered.
Han.
Her
What's
legs
wrong?
went soft,
Louis
and
Han
she
slid
slid
down
down
the
the
stairs and
stairs,
held the phone,
gritting her
not
teeth.
caring.
Yu Lily
climbed
suddenly
up.
smiled happily.
When she finally
looked at
reached
the
the
face on the
stairs,
phone, and
she
said,
found that the top
"You
floor was
actually
full of
answered.
hospital gowns and
I
white
just wanted
coats."
to try."
Walking up and
Louis
stumbling
Han
to the
heard
edge of the
this and
top
was a
floor,
little upset.
Yu Lily felt a
"So you
rare
came
sense
to
of
try your luck?"
relaxation.
"Yes,
Free.
this
I'm
shows
going
that
to be
my luck
free,
is still
Yu
very
Lily.
good."
Yu Lily smiled happily, looked at him and said, "Louis Han, are you still single?"
Chapter 8.
What does it have to do with you? At 1 o'clock
Louis
in the
Han
morning,
was even more upset.
Alarms suddenly
Looked at her
sounded
little
everywhere
face
in
with
the
a bright
hospital.
smile and said,
All the doctors
"Are
and
you very
nurses on
free?"
night shift were
Yu
startled
Lily's
and
heart was
hurriedly ran
sour,
out.
and the smell
The
of gas
patient
was
in
getting
room
stronger and
V8 is
stronger.
missing.
Even
Everyone
Yu Lily was a little
look
short
for
of
her.
breath.
Gently
The
shaking
patient
her
in
head,
room
Yu
V8
Lily
is
pretended
missing.
to be relaxed and
She
said,
has a strong
"I'm very
intention to
busy,
commit suicide.
but I still have to take some time
Please
to
pay
talk to you."
attention.
Oh
You
Ming
seem to
ran
be
from
in a
one
good
room
mood.
to another and looked
Louis
around.
Han yawned.
Finally,
"I'm
he grabbed
sleepy.
a nurse and asked
What do you want to
loudly,
say?
"Where is the
When Yu
monitoring
Lily
room?"
heard that,
"Where is
her
your
smile
monitoring
deepened.
room?" She
The
chuckled
nurse
and
was
said,
shocked by
"Maybe
him.
you don't treat me as
She
a friend."
stuttered and told
but the
him the
only
location
people I've
of
ever
the
considered
surveillance
a friend
room.
are you and
He
Qian
immediately
Qian.
let go of her
Qian
and
is very
disappeared in a
happy now.
flash.
I hope you can find your
before he
other
went to the
half as soon
so-called
as possible
monitoring
and
room,
live a happier
Oh Ming
life.
suddenly thought of a place.
Louis Han pouted.
He pressed the elevator
This is
and
not
went
something
directly
you
to
would
the
say.
13th floor.
What the hell?
The wind was
The
very
smile
strong.
on Yu Lily's
Yu
face
Lily
became
was
even
trembling all
brighter.
over her body.
She shook her head
The
and
railing
softly
on the top
said,
floor was
"I'm just here to
unexpectedly
meet a
high.
friend.
Yu
If
Lily
I suddenly
tried her
die
best
one
to drag
day and
several
don't even
things
have
under
a
the
friend,
railing,
that would
and
be
then
too
there was
sad."
a little height.
Although these
Stepping
two
on it,
friends might not
Yu
be
Lily's
considered
hand
friends,
curled on the highest handrail and lifted her foot
It is
up.
said that the
But
scourge
before
lives
she
for
hooked on the
1,000
handrail,
years.
she suddenly
People
heard
like
a
you will live
thunderous
at least
voice coming
100
from
years.
behind.
Louis
Yu
Han
Lily.
said half jokingly,
Yu Lily's
looking at
heart
her.
skipped a beat.
"Why did you
and she was
suddenly
scared to
mention
death.
this?" Her
Yu
body
Lily
smiled
softened,
brightly,
and the
shrugged
whole
and
person
said,
just fell
"Hey,
down.
it's so
The
boring.
ground was rough cement.
I want to talk
Yu
to
Lily
you,
fell and
but I'm
felt pain
serious.
all over her body.
Goodbye." She
Louis
screamed
Han.
and lost all her
After
strength.
that,
She
Ming's
hung up the
heart
video
was
call.
empty.
Louis
Quickly
Han
ran
didn't
over
care
and helped
threw
her
the
up.
phone on the sofa.
Noticing that
and
she was
picked up the
shaking
hairdryer
badly,
to dry his
he
hair.
felt
even more angry and scolded her. "Are you
Chapter
a fast king
18.
sick?"
Yu
The feeling
Lily,
of nausea
don't
and
you know to
vomiting
wear a
came.
coat on such a cold
Everything
day?
around her was swaying.
As he spoke,
her head
he took
hurt,
off his coat
and
and
she
covered her
collapsed
body
on the
with it.
sofa.
Yu Lily
Finally,
felt
she
warm
was
and
free,
opened her eyes
so
weakly.
tired and sleepy.
It was very dark.
How long
and
had
the
it
light
been?
outside was
In
all
order
blocked
to survive,
by the railing next to her.
she had not had a
Yu
good
Lily's
rest.
eyes were so
Now,
blurred that she
she
couldn't
could
see his
finally have a
expression
good
at all.
sleep.
However,
Lying on the sofa,
these words
Yu
were
Lily
clearly
slightly narrowed
transmitted
her
into her
eyes,
ears,
and sadness
with a low
came like a
laugh.
tide.
Yu Lily's
No
tears
friends, no
suddenly
family.
rolled down.
It was
and she
estimated that
helplessly
the
let
first
herself
person
cry.
to find out that she was
Oh,
dead
Ming,
would be
let
the
me
landlady
die, okay?
next door.
I beg you,
One
let
day
me
in the
die,
future,
okay?
someone might think
Why
of
do
it
you
and
save
ask,
me?
"Ah,
Why
where
don't
did
you
you
let
let
me
me
go?"
die?"
His
When they
weak and
found out that
powerless
Yu Lily
voice
was
was
dead,
filled filled with humble pleading.
What would their expressions be
Ming
like?
was deeply hurt by
Pity?
such words.
Sympathy?
Her heartbeat
Or
affected her
expressionless?
eyes, causing them
any
to become
emotion.
moist. But what is certain is that her disappearance will not bring a little sadness to anyone.
She lowered her head and
bring a
burst
little
into
fluctuation.
She
Her
begged,
existence had
"Don't
always
meddle
been
in other people's
superfluous.
business.
Only she
Ming,
alone,
I beg
in
you.
this corner that
I
no
have
one
nothing
knew,
left.
was struggling to
Now
breathe.
I don't even have the right to
Therefore,
seek
the
death."
director of the orphanage
Who said
named
you
her
don't have
Lily.
anything?
Lily tried to
Ming
turn
held
over
in his
and felt that
arms.
she still had
His
a little
voice
energy.
trembled.
Lying
His
on the
throat
sofa,
was empty.
she picked up her mobile
He
phone and
whispered,
opened her WeChat
"Whatever you
moments.
want, I'll give
There
it
were
to
a lot
you."
of likes and
When
comments.
Lily heard that,
Many of them
she
were
stopped
former
crying.
colleagues and former
Ming
classmates.
held her with both hands and
However,
pressed her head
many of
against
them
his
were
chest.
friends who liked it.
No matter what,
Looking at the
I
comments,
cannot die.
some people said that she was getting more and more beautiful.
Ming
and
rubbed
some
her
people
short
were
hair
regretting
and
that
said,
her original long
"Live
hair
well,
was fluttering.
then there's hope for everything,
Lily curled
isn't
her
it?
lips and
This
replied
is what
with an
you
emoji.
told me.
Have you forgotten?
Suddenly,
Lily
a
could
new
clearly
comment
feel
came
his
in.
presence.
It was
At
from
the same
Lu
time that her
Yihan.
vocal cords
He said,
vibrated,
"Are
her
you with
chest
Ming
also
again?"
vibrated gently.
Again.
His voice
Yu
was like
Lily
an
replied,
echo, entering
"No,
her
Lu Yihan.
ears. the back of the photo is exposed. Yu Lily was stunned and clicked on the big picture.
Chapter
Just behind Yu Lily's selfie.
At that time,
there was a
when
figure.
she said this,
The focus of the camera was on Yu Lily's face,
with her long hair
and the small
draped over
figure
her
behind her only
and her
occupied
little
a
face
little.
was as proud as a
It seemed
peacock.
that Ming
Her
was sitting on the
posture was
table
arrogant
behind her,
and proud,
looking forward.
At that time,
and his eyes
she
were
lived
looking
like
at the
a queen
camera
beside him.
Yu Lily's
Bold,
heart skipped
proud,
a beat.
and wild.
She
Who
enlarged the
didn't envy
photo
her?
until it was
Who
all
didn't
mosaic.
like her?
Yu
How
Lily
good it
was
was
sure
in
that
those
this
days.
person was really
But why did
Ming.
she leave?
But when did
Why
he
did
sit
she
behind
leave?
her? The
She
so-called first
actually
love was just
didn't
one of the
notice.
excuses. It turned
Was the
out that she was so
so-called
close
freedom
to him
really so
today.
important?
How
nice.
Did she really get
Yu
the
Lily's
so-called
head was
freedom?
buzzing.
And her vision
knew
was
that
getting
after
darker
leaving
and
him,
darker.
she had a bad
She
life.
couldn't even see the phone
Very
screen
bad.
clearly.
Yu Lily,
Lying on the
who
sofa,
used to be optimistic,
Yu Lily gasped,
wanted to commit
but when
suicide
he
several
inhaled,
times.
all he could smell
Yu
was
Lily
the smell
heard
of
this,
gas. She
out
suddenly
of the
laughed
corner
as
of
if
her
she had
eye,
heard a joke.
Yu Lily
Lowering
glanced
her
at the
head
small
against his
figure in the
chest,
photo.
Yu Lily
She
whispered
tried her
in a
best to
muffled
smile
voice.
and said,
"Yes,
Goodbye,
I am
Ming."
hypocritical.
Who
That
can
day,
always be positive?
Ming had been busy from
When
dawn
the
to
hot
dusk.
blood was defeated by
At noon,
reality again
he had
and again,
invited some foreign guests
even Yu
to the
Lily
revolving
couldn't get up
restaurant
again.
for lunch.
In the past,
Who knew that he
she
would
firmly
actually
believed
see
that there was
someone
no
he would never
obstacle
have
that couldn't
expected.
be overcome.
Yu Lily.
People who seek
She
death
cut her
at the
hair.
slightest provocation
His long
are
black
simply
hair was cut to the
unreasonable.
length of his ears.
But when it happened to her,
Yu Lily could
sitting
finally
in the back,
understand why they
Ming
didn't want
watched
to
with
live.
his own eyes as she took out her phone to
it
take
wasn't due to
selfies.
external factors.
Sometimes she pouted.
It was just
and
because she
sometimes
couldn't
made a
stand
peace
it.
sign.
That's all.
Cliché.
Tired.
They hadn't seen
Too
each other for
tired.
so many years.
The world was so
but her
big,
selfie skills
and
were
no one
still
would
so
notice
bad.
that she was missing.
However,
Maybe
he could tell
Ming
that she
would
was
care
in a
about
good
it for a
mood.
while and
What
feel
happened
sorry in
last
his
night
heart.
seemed to be nothing more
Yu
than a
Lily
haircut.
died.
What a
Ming looked
pity.
away and sneered
I lost
coldly.
such a fun toy.
What a big heart.
But
sad. There would
Chapter
be no
8:19.
She used to think that he
Ming
loved her
felt
deeply,
ridiculous for his
but she was
naivety
just
just
deceiving
now,
herself.
and then tried not
She
to look
couldn't
at her.
afford to be with
Just
such a
when
proud
he was
man.
talking to the foreign
Ming
guests,
was stunned.
he couldn't help but
After
look
a
at her.
moment of silence,
She
he
seemed to
whispered,
be in a good mood
"Yu
and
Lily,
posted
don't
several
let me
times
look
on her
down on
WeChat
you.
moments.
When did
This
you
was
look up to
something
me?"
she had never done
Yu
before.
Lily's crying had
He once
completely
asked her,
stopped.
"Why
and
don't
she
you like to
chuckled.
take selfies or
What's
post
your
on
identity?
WeChat moments?"
And what's my
Other
identity?
girls like to do this
Don't
kind of
think
thing.
that people are stupid.
She looked disdainful.
In fact, no one
What's
is
there
stupid.
to take selfies?
Ming didn't
I'm
speak
afraid
again.
that my charm will
He
shock
stood
the
up,
entire
pulled her
WeChat
up,
moments,
and carried her.
If all men fall
Then
in love with
he
me,
walked down the
what can I
stairs.
do? Several
Ming
doctors
couldn't
and
help
nurses
but
were
laugh at her
preparing to go to the top
shameless answer.
floor.
But later,
When they saw
Ming
Ming
learned
learned
that it
was
was
because of
down.
inferiority.
They were all stunned.
Because she
He
was a
made
mistress
way for them.
She
pressed
didn't
the
want
elevator
others to know
button,
everything
and he
watched
gave
them
her.
go down. Once her
Lily
luxurious
fell
life was
hard.
discovered,
With
those
bruises
who
all
originally
over her
targeted
body.
her and hated
The
her would
nurse took
definitely
off her
take
clothes
advantage
and
of it
applied
and spread the
medicine on
news
her.
more wantonly.
With her upper body
For example,
exposed.
Yu Lily
is
is
a
a
mistress
mistress
of
of
a
a
rich
rich
second
generation.
generation.
About 10 minutes later,
Yu
the
Lily
nurse
sells
was
her
sent
body
away
to
by
earn
Ming
tuition
after
fees.
emergency treatment of the
Yu
wound.
Lily lives a luxurious
then,
life without
Su
shame.
Cheng once again brought over
All
a
these
hot
rumors
porridge.
made her feel very
After handing it to
uncomfortable.
Ming,
Over time,
he consciously
she
left.
didn't have this habit.
Ming personally
Good
opened the
life,
lunchbox
bad
and
life.
said firmly,
It was better to
"Eat
let her know
something."
all about it.
There was no need to
let
others know what your own life was
and
like.
did not respond
It
at
was
all.
meaningless to be
If
looked
you
down
don't eat,
upon or
I'll
envied.
have to feed you with my
Ming
mouth.
had read all of
Yu
this in her
Lily opened
diary.
her eyes.
Seeing that she finished eating and left, Ming
On her
finally
pale
stopped
face,
thinking and
it was
continued
hard
to
to see
discuss the
any
contract
emotion.
with the foreign guests.
She sneered and said,
After eating
"I
and
haven't
seeing the
brushed
foreign
my
guests
teeth
for
off."
several days,
Su Cheng suddenly called.
this man had a morbid
Ming
obsession
leaned on
with
the driver's
cleanliness.
seat of the Ferrari.
He would never
Last
insist
night's
on it.
hangover and insomnia
Indeed,
made
after
him a little
hearing this,
tired today.
Ming's
He picked
originally
up the
calm
phone,
face suddenly
put it on
became a little
speaker and
messy.
put it aside.
Seeing the change in
Mr.
his
O,
expression,
there seems to be
Yu
something
Lily
wrong
closed
with
her
Miss
eyes
Yu.
in relief.
Ha.
However,
Ming
suddenly
gently pressed
Ming
his
reached
temple,
out to help her up,
squinted
and then
lean
her
back
lips
in
were
the chair.
soft. She
Yu
spent
Lily
all the
suddenly
money,
opened her
sold
eyes
all the
as if she
valuable
was struck
clothes
by
and
lightning.
shoes, and then returned the money to Louis Han. Then she went to the revolving restaurant you just went to and had a meal, spending more than
Chapter
1,000 yuan.
838.
You know, before
Ming
yesterday,
held her head and
she
looked
ate
at her with his
instant
eyes
noodles or
open.
fast food every
Yu
day,
Lily opened
and
her
her
eyes
daily
wide and
consumption was
looked up
less
at him
than
in
50
disbelief.
yuan.
Hearing
However,
this,
a moment later,
Ming finally
something
straightened
warm,
his body,
wet and sticky
and a
came
bright
out of his
light
mouth and
flashed
entered
in
his
her
mouth.
eyes.
What
So
kind of
disgusting.
life was she living?
Yu Lily almost vomited.
Did he cheat so much money just to repay his debt?
Yu Lily
His
tried
heart
to push
ached
him away,
and his face darkened.
but it was useless.
He started the
Ming
car
held
and
her
asked,
face with one
"Where is
hand
she
and
now?"
supported her back
She
with the
went
other.
home.
Sensing
Su
her
Cheng's
struggle,
voice was a
he
little
immediately
hesitant as he
tightened his
said,
elbows and
"I
held her
checked,
hands in
and
place.
there was no money left
He
in her
pressed his
card.
whole body
I
against
guess
her
she didn't
and
have
pressed her
much
under
cash
his body.
left."
Yu
This
Lily frowned
situation,
tightly and
Oh
closed
Ming's
her
heart
eyes as
sank
if
and
she
he
couldn't bear
snapped,
to look at it.
"Send me her address."
She tried to turn her head
Yes.
away.
Keep an
Ming
eye
raised
on
her head
her.
again and let
If
her throat
anything
straighten,
happens,
and the
Russian
food soon
immediately.
flowed down naturally. Yu Lily unconsciously swallowed a
Su
lot
Cheng
of it,
hesitated
which
and
made
said
her hair
cautiously,
stand on end.
"I'm at the company now."
Ming finally
Because
released
she
her,
went home, I
scooped
didn't
another
follow her,
spoon,
but the
looked
more
at
I
her,
thought about
and
it,
raised
the
his
more I
eyebrows
felt something
slightly.
was wrong.
Continue.
F***.
Yu Lily retched, and a little
Ming
tear
couldn't help
oozed
but
out of her
swear.
eyes. His
Seeing
eyes were
this,
red with anger.
Ming scooped a
"Are you
spoonful for himself.
king brainless?"
While eating, he said, "You are the one who hasn't brushed your teeth for a few days."
Chapter 8:20.
I haven't vomited
He dialed
yet.
Yu Lily's number
Why are
and
you
watched her
retching?
drive the black Ferrari
Oh,
on a
Ming,
rampage.
You are getting
Yu
more
Lily
and more
saw the number
disgusting.
and felt like she
You
was
are
dreaming.
not bad either.
Sliding the
Ming
screen of
took
the
a bite
mobile
and
phone,
found it quite
Yu
delicious.
Lily picked it up. "You actually
Where
like
are
such
you?"
a strange way of
Ming's
eating.
voice was cold
Do you
and
want
deep,
to continue?
and there was a hint of
Yu
panic
Lily
in it.
stared at him.
However, her
Yu
throat
Lily
was
had
very
no
dry,
time to
and
analyze
she
the
didn't spit
emotions in
anything
it.
out.
She put her
Ming
hand
took a
down,
sip,
chuckled and asked,
put it in his mouth,
"It's none of
and
your
was
business."
about to move toward her.
Her voice was
Yu
weak.
Lily turned her
and
head,
then she hung
looked
up the phone.
disgusted and shouted.
After hanging up,
"I will eat it
she was
myself."
inexplicably
Hearing
happy.
that,
She
Ming
actually
put down
threw
the
her
spoon,
face at
put his hands
before
under
she
her
died,
armpits,
just
and
like
lifted her
before.
up. It was
He
so
overlapped
cool.
two high
Yu
pillows
Lily
and
buried
let
her
her
head
lean with a
against the
smile,
headboard,
and her tears
then
seeped
he pushed
into
the
the
small
sofa.
table on the bed
Ming
over,
heard the voice,
put the bowl
and
in
his
front of
heart
her,
sank.
and motioned
When
her
he
to
dialed
eat.
again,
Yu Lily
no one
looked at the
answered the
salty
phone.
porridge.
He
Which
quickly
was
drove
white
to the
and had a
address
little
given by
color.
Su Cheng
She
and
struggled
ran up
to
3
raise her
steps at a
hands.
time.
Her hands were also very sore,
403,403,
and her fingers were holding the spoon.
Seeing the house
trembling
number,
slightly.
Ming looked around
Looking
and found
at
that there was
Ming's
even no
expression,
doorbell.
Yu Lily picked
The door
up the
was a
spoon,
thick
but
stainless
she couldn't
steel
hold it
security
steadily,
door,
and the porridge on
Ming
it fell on
slammed
the
his
quilt
palm
that
and
had just been
shouted,
changed.
"Yu Lily,
Seeing
open
this,
the door."
Ming
The
narrowed
sound
his
of the
eyes
palm
and
slamming the
chuckled.
door came in.
He took 2
and
pieces
Yu
of
Lily
paper
vaguely
towel
seemed
and
to
wiped
hear
the porridge
Ming's
off.
voice.
Then
Her head
he
was
picked
getting
up the bowl
heavier
and
and scooped
heavier,
up a spoonful
and
of
her head
porridge
was
to place
getting
in
muddled.
front of her.
When
Yu
Yu
Lily
Lily heard
glanced
this
at him
voice,
and shrank
she
back in
smiled
resistance.
sadly.
Ming
Hallucination.
faintly raised his
Committing
eyebrows with an
suicide with
obvious
gas
warning.
is really happy.
She pursed her lips.
Even the auditory
opened her mouth,
hallucination can
and
make
ate
me
the
hear the
porridge.
voice I want to hear
It
the
was
most.
quite tasty.
That's great.
It was quite delicious.
Lying on the sofa,
Yu Lily didn't feel
slowly
hungry at
closed
first,
her eyes.
but after a few
Ming
bites,
slammed the
she
door
felt her
hard.
stomach ache.
But there was no
So
response for a
hungry.
long time.
After eating
Ming
half a
was
bowl,
more and more
Yu
scared,
Lily didn't want to
and he
eat
slammed
anymore.
the door like crazy.
Ming ate the rest
But
of the
that door
porridge
wasn't
himself.
something that could be opened just by ramming. His heart was
Faced
getting
with
more
Yu
and more
Lily's strange
panicked.
gaze, he calmly
It was like
said,
something was
"This was
passing
supposed
away
to be my
quickly,
supper."
and his heart was
In other
terribly
words,
empty.
it was Yu Lily
Even
who
when he
took
saw
his
her
supper.
covered in blood
Yu
under
Lily
him.
lowered her head and
Ming
felt
had not been so
unspeakably
afraid.
ironic.
The door
How
of
could he
402
act like this
next
so
door
naturally
suddenly opened,
just
and a
like
middle-aged
before.
woman looked over and
Didn't
said,
he know that this
"What are
would
you doing?"
easily cause
Her
misunderstandings?
tone was bad.
This would
When
make her
Ming
think too
saw
much.
her, his eyes lit up,
Lowering her
and he
eyes,
hurriedly said,
Yu Lily gently
"Do you
pushed
know
the
the
small table
landlord
away
here?
and said,
Is the
"If you're
person
done
living
eating,
here
you
Yu
can
Lily?"
leave now."
The middle-aged woman was stunned and said, "I am the landlord. Who are you?
Chapter
Why are you looking for you?"
839.
Ming
I'm her
packed up his
man.
things and put away
Ming
the small
almost
table.
roared.
He
He
looked at her
pointed
with
at
a
the door
faint
and
smile
said,
and said,
"Open the
"I'll
door.
sleep here tonight.
Something
in case
might
you
have
run away
happened to
again."
her."
The
Ha!
middle-aged woman
Yu
looked at
Lily
him
felt a
strangely
little
and
funny.
picked up her cell
Who
phone
do you
to
think
dial
you are?
Yu Lily's number.
Do you care whether
Yu
I
Lily's
live or
cell phone
die?
rang above her head.
Anyway,
She could hear
I
it,
used to be your
but
sugar
she had
daddy.
no strength. Ming leaned forward.
He took a glance
scaring
and saw
Yu
that
Lily
it was
and
the
making her
landlord's
shrink
wife.
back. Yu Lily
Seeing her
slapped the
reaction,
phone away.
Ming
Ming
fell to
smiled
the
with
ground.
satisfaction. The soundproofing here
He
was
put his
very
hands
good,
on both sides
and the
of
ringing
her.
of a cell phone
With an
could not pass through
indescribable
the
evil
door.
tone,
Ming
he
was
said with a
going
faint
crazy.
smile.
I'm
With red
looking
eyes,
forward
he
to our
roared,
next cooperation.
"Open the door.
I want to play
If
the
something
sugar daddy
happens to
and
her,
mistress cosplay
don't even
again."
think about having it easy.
Raising one hand, he lifted her chin,
The
narrowed his
landlady
eyes
was
slightly,
shocked.
and whispered.
She looked at his
"It's just
suspicious
like
face
before.
and shoved him angrily.
It's very exciting
Then
and
she
fun,
closed the door and
isn't
locked it.
Yu
She
Lily
said to
looked
the
at him,
inside,
gritted her teeth,
"Xueqi,
and
go
raised
next
her
door and
hand
see
to
if
hit
he
him
was
in the
there."
face. But before she
A
raised
woman's
it,
voice
it
came
was
from
blocked
inside.
by Ming in the middle.
Ming waited for little
Ming
Snow to
raised
come
his
out,
eyebrows and
but
looked at
after
her
a
with
long
a smile.
time,
No one came
"You
out.
want to hit me?"
Ming couldn't
Yu Lily
wait any
sneered.
longer. More
"You
than
went to
that,
room
I want to
403
kill
and
you.
banged on the door.
You have to pay
He
with
shouted.
your life, you.
"You
Do
open
you
the
think
door."
I will be afraid? Yu Lily looked up at him fearlessly.
Chapter 8:21.
In my current situation, the cell
I
phone on
can't
the ground
wait to
was
die.
still ringing.
My
like
life
a
is
hypnotic
worthless.
music. If
Drawing
I can
Yu
kill
Lily's
you,
consciousness
it will
little
be
by
worth
little,
it, Mr. O.
and it was difficult for her to
Ming
open
was
her
speechless.
eyes. "Yu
She
Lily,
almost
you."
blurted out the name.
Ming
but
roared
after
with red
saying
eyes.
it, Yu
But it
Lily
didn't
was
work,
surprised to
so
find
he
that
turned
something
around
was
and
wrong.
knocked on the door of room
Seeing
402.
Ming's more and more meaningful
"Open the door," expression. You
Her
Lily
cheeks
is alone
unconsciously
inside.
burned.
Something bad
With an
will
evil
happen.
smile in his eyes.
My woman
Ming
is
said
inside.
softly.
Open
Then
the
you
door.
try.
I will
However,
sleep here
the
with you
landlady
today.
did not pay
Find a
attention
chance
to
to
him
kill
anymore.
me. Looking at
As he
him behind the
spoke,
door,
he had
it
straightened
was like
up,
looking at a
and his long
madman.
fingers slowly
Ming was a
unbuttoned
little
the coat of his
frustrated,
suit.
and for
You
a
Lily
while,
sneered,
he felt at a
stared at him,
loss.
turned
What
over
to do,
and lay
what
down.
to do?
She
You
covered
Lily
the
had
top
a
of her
habit
head with the
that
quilt
was,
and closed
she
her
must
eyes.
have cash with her.
Oh,
Or a
Ming
little
sat on the
deposit in her
sofa,
card.
moved the
It
computer
didn't
on the
matter
side,
how much the
and
deposit
began
was,
to work.
as long
After
as she had
noticing
it.
that you Lily
But
had
today,
fallen
she
asleep,
had taken out
he
all of
looked
her
at the
savings.
time. Not a
It was
single cent
already
was left.
past 3 in the morning.
Moreover,
It was
she didn't
very
usually
late.
take selfies at all.
She picked up
and
the
she
phone
didn't
and
like to
opened
post it on
WeChat,
WeChat moments.
sent a few
But
messages
today
to
she
Li
posted
Siqing,
a picture
and
of
then
smiling
closed the
happily,
computer, which was
lying
too
on the
abnormal.
sofa. and fell asleep.
Lily was alone
It
in
was
there.
a silent night.
She was acting
The
so
nurse
abnormally.
came in early in the morning
She
to
must
check
be
on
preparing
Lily
for something bad.
Ming was awakened by
Ming
the
didn't
sound
dare
of the
to
door
think,
opening,
and he didn't want to
He
think
looked at his
what
watch.
Lily was doing
It was
inside.
already past 7
Snowy
in the morning.
climbed over the railing.
In winter,
and the cell phone
the sky
inside was
brightened
ringing
very late,
and the clear and
Picking
melodious
up her
ringtone
phone
came out.
She saw
the
several
most
missed
classic
calls
Apple
from Lee
ringtone.
Teaching.
And just
She
on the
watched
edge of the
Lily
sofa
being
facing the
examined
French
by the
window,
nurse.
a bare foot
After
was
reminding her
exposed
to keep an
white and
eye on
tender,
her, which
she
made
walked
Snowy
out.
jealous.
She called
She
Lee
patted the
Teaching,
French window
and he
and
quickly
shouted,
picked up.
"You,
Second
However,
brother.
there was no answer.
Lee
The
Teaching's
French window
voice
door
sounded
was locked,
casual,
and the person
From time
inside
to time,
did not respond
he could
at
hear
all.
the laughter of children,
Snowy patted a
which
few
made
times
Ming
outside,
secretly envious.
shouted a few times,
Lee Teaching
and
seemed to
finally
be in a
returned
good
the way
mood
she
and
came.
asked,
"Is
Mom,
it urgent?
you seems to have fainted
It's
on the
urgent.
sofa,
and the
All
cell
right,
phone
wait
inside
for
has
me.
been ringing.
With
but
that,
I can't wake
he
her
hung
up."
up the phone.
Snowy's voice came out, and Ming heard it clearly.
Lily was helped into the
Looking
bathroom
inside,
by the nurse.
Ming's eyes
She
were red
asked for
and
a
he shouted,
toothbrush,
"Toothpaste,
something must have
and a
happened.
towel to
Open
brush her
the door."
teeth and wash her
The
face
landlady
before coming
also
out.
knew that things might
She
be
looked
unusual,
much better than she
so
did
she
2
quickly
days
took
ago.
the key and went out.
Ming looked at her
There was
short
a
hair,
large bunch of
which
keys,
only reached her
and the
ears,
landlady checked
and
the
the
label
thin
number
yellow
one by
face
one,
hidden under the short
squinting
hair.
her eyes
His
and slightly
heart
tilting
ached.
her head.
"You don't look like
Ming
a
couldn't
human
stand it
anymore."
anymore.
Yet
So he
you're
grabbed
still
the
so
big bunch of
stubborn.
keys,
Which
looked
son of
through
a
it,
bitch
and
spoiled
soon
him
found
to
the
this
key to room
extent?
403.
However, when he opened it, he found that there was another wooden door inside. Ming almost went crazy.
Chapter 840.
He searched for the key
Ming
and opened
washed
the
up in
door.
the bathroom of the
However,
ward.
when the door was
When he
opened
went
a little,
out,
a
strong
Chang
and
had
pungent
already
smell
brought
of gas
breakfast.
came out.
2
When the
servings.
landlady smelled it,
Seeing
her
Ming
heart
come out,
skipped a beat.
Chang
She
pretended
quickly
not to
stepped
see
back
him.
and looked inside
He opened
in
the
disbelief.
lunchbox for Lily
As
and
for
said,
Ming,
"Have some
he took
porridge."
a big step and ran
"It's
in
good
like a
for your
madman.
stomach." At a glance,
While talking,
he saw
he had helped
Lily
Lily
sitting on the
prepare the
sofa.
side dishes and porridge,
Lily's face
and
turned
thoughtfully
red.
put the spoon on the
Her
table
lips,
where Lily
face,
could
and
easily
skin
reach it.
all had an unusual
Lily
shade
saw
of
the
red.
dark circles under his eyes, which were
With a
obviously
big stride
caused by
forward,
hard work.
Ming's
She
legs
felt a little
almost turned to
sympathetic
jelly.
and said sincerely,
His eyes stung,
"Thank you,"
and his vision blurred.
Chang smiled.
Ming's heart
When
felt
he
like
was
it was
about to
being
speak,
ruthlessly grabbed
he suddenly
by something.
felt a chill on his
It
back.
was as if it was about
His
to
back
break,
was stiff,
and the pain was hysterical.
Chang quickly waved his
An
hand
indescribable
and said,
sense of
"You are
regret
too polite.
engulfed him so tightly
your
that he was
time.
almost suffocating.
I'll go first."
He was so
Turning
flustered
his
that
head,
he didn't know where to put his hands
saw
and
Ming's
feet.
obviously
With great
unhappy
difficulty,
expression.
Ming
He
picked her
hurriedly
up and
said,
rushed out of the
"Master
door.
I'll go
His
to the
breathing
company
became more
first."
urgent as he
Okay.
carried her down to the
Chang
fourth floor.
secretly breathed a sigh of
He
relief.
placed her in the car,
But when he
and
was
the
almost
Ferrari
at the
went on a
door,
rampage without
he
any
suddenly
sense of
heard
reason.
Ming's voice.
Speeding straight ahead, he said,
You're
"Remember
not
to have
allowed to
lunch."
die.
Yes. Chang responded and ran away. Lily
Chapter
saw that he couldn't
822.
wait to leave.
Lily
She
had a dream.
unconsciously bent her
In the
lips,
dream,
looked
she
down
went
at the
back to the
breakfast,
day when the
and
doctor
raised her
announced
hand
that
to
she
pick
was
up the
pregnant.
spoon.
After
Because of
eating
taking
something
contraceptive
last night
pills
and
for
a
a
night
long
of rest,
time, your body may
Lily's
have
strength had
antibodies
recovered
to
a lot.
contraceptive pills.
Ming just
or you did
glanced
not
at
take
her,
other safety
sat on the
measures,
sofa next
which
to
led
her,
to pregnancy,
and started to eat.
But according to the
While
situation
eating
you
breakfast,
described, he didn't
I do
forget
not
to watch
recommend
you
you to
Lily's
have this
movements.
child.
After seeing that
Contraceptive
she was
pills
really
have a
eating
great
breakfast,
impact on the fetus.
he was relieved. Now you can't
After
see any
you, Lily
problems,
was full,
but it is
she
difficult to
folded the
guarantee
food and
that
pushed
after
the
you
small
are born,
table aside.
the fetus will be
Then,
deformed or have
her
some
eyes
other
fell on the
problems.
TV remote control
Lily
on the
touched
edge
her
of the
belly,
sofa,
looked down at the
sofa
doctor in
was a
front of
little
her,
far from
and
the bed.
asked, For
About
example,
4 or 5
mental
steps away.
retardation and cerebral
Lily was
palsy?
bored.
The
She
doctor
stared at the
nodded
remote control and
sympathetically.
looked at the needle in her
Pregnancy
hand.
still needs to be
Lily
prepared.
measured the length of the
This
infusion
situation
tube and
is
found
too
that it
sudden,
couldn't support her
and
to
it is
walk
not
to the
a
other
good time
side.
for adults and
So
children.
she propped herself up
While the
and lifted
fetus
the
is still
quilt.
young, abort
Ming
the
was
child,
looking at the
and
computer.
don't take contraceptive
He
pills
saw her
in the
movement,
future.
looked
It
up
is
and
very
asked,
bad for your
"What
health.
do you want to do?"
Coming out of the
Lily
hospital,
ignored him and reached out
Lily's
to take the
mind
bag
was
of
in a
medicine.
mess.
But
She was
before she
pregnant.
put down her
She was
hand,
pregnant.
it was taken by
However,
Ming.
the child was likely
Ming
to be
was a little
deformed.
tall.
What
He
should
was
I
more
do?
than 6 feet
Should
tall.
I tell Ming?
Almost a head
No,
taller
no
than her.
way. If I tell
Ming
felt
Ming,
a strong
he
sense
will
of oppression,
definitely blame me.
subconsciously took
Blame
a step
me for
back,
taking
but felt
contraceptive
that it was
pills.
too useless.
Blame me for
so
not
she stiffened
protecting
her neck and
myself.
looked at him. However,
What do you
he
want
had
to
taken
do?
protective measures
Ming
every
asked asked again. Why did
To
she
the
suddenly
toilet?
get pregnant?
His sudden gentleness
Lily
made
drove
Lily's
back to the
heart
villa,
skip a beat.
But before she went
Looking
in,
away,
she heard
Lily
on the
reached
phone.
out to take the medicine
Ming's
bag
back
from
was to the
Ming's
door,
hand,
and
but
Lily
he subconsciously walked lightly.
Lily looked at
so
him,
the man inside did not
raised
notice
his
her return,
eyebrows,
and did
listening
not
to
speak.
his tone.
Lily
Ming
looked
seemed
at
to be a
him.
little impatient.
After a long
and said to the
while, she
phone,
said,
"Mom,
I want to
my
watch
career
TV.
is not stable yet.
Ming
When the
couldn't
time is
help but
right,
smile.
I will be engaged to Miss Shen." Engaged.
He turned his
Lily
head to
stood
look
at
at
the
the
door as
TV
if she
remote
had been
control
struck
on
by
the side of the
lightning.
sofa.
Ming
As
is
he
getting
walked,
engaged?
he said,
Yesterday
Ming
you
is
wanted
getting
to die,
engaged,
and today you
Didn't
want to
he
watch
say
TV.
that he wanted to marry
Why are
me?
you so fickle?
He also secretly ordered a
Ming,
ring and
you Ming
secretly
Lily, he
prepared a
said.
wedding dress.
Chang you,
Could it be that all of this
Cheng,
was
Cheng,
fake?
I Cheng, I Ming
Could it
you
be
Ming.
that
Cheng.
these were all
Cheng.
prepared for the so-called engagement partner, and not for me?
What am I?
A mistress?
Chapter
Or a bed
841.
partner?
Lily stood in the same place, and the remote control fell on the bed. And her mind was blank. Even more angry.
Ming hung up the
and she
phone
went
and
back
was
to
about
bed
to turn
angrily.
around.
Ming
Lily
hung up the
quickly
medicine
took a
bag
step back
again
and
quietly
returned to the
avoided
sofa
his
to
sight.
sit down.
She was
Lily
confused.
turned on the TV and
Lily
found a
sneaked
variety
into his
show
study
to watch.
and sat down in
This
front
was
of the
an old
desk.
show that had been
The
around
design
for more than
drafts
10
and
years.
sample drawings were all
It
there.
specially invited
It
some
was
stars to
beautiful.
come and play games
Every
together.
detail was
And the
delicately
ratings had
and
always been
carefully
very
drawn.
high.
Originally,
Lily watched for a
she
while,
thought that Ming
but
had
she couldn't
prepared
find
these things
anything
for her.
funny. But from the looks of
Instead,
it now,
she was even
she
more
was
upset.
thinking too much.
She sneaked a
Yu
glance
Lily's
at
heart
Ming
was
and
filled
heard the
with
sound of his typing
indescribable
on the
disappointment.
keyboard. It could
She
be
reached
seen that
out
he
and
was
touched
very
her
busy
heart.
with work,
And an
but
indescribable
why is he
bitterness
still here?
surged.
Is
It
it
was
really
so
just to
sad.
humiliate me
So,
and prevent
it
me
was
from
just her
committing
own
suicide that he
thinking.
stayed here for so long? He shouldn't
Forget it.
waste
She was
so
just
much
a
time
kept
for
woman,
things that are
wasn't
not
she?
worth it.
What
Is
right
it
did he have
possible
to
that
be
he
sad?
still likes me?
What right did he
Thinking
have
of this
to be
possibility,
unhappy?
From the
Lily's
moment she
heart
decided to
suddenly
give herself to him,
accelerated.
she
But
was
soon,
destined to lose
she
many
felt bitter in
things.
her heart.
No love,
It can't be.
no freedom,
If he really
no
still liked
self-respect,
her, why would
no
he insult her
identity.
like that?
Everything
In the
was
past,
self-inflicted.
he couldn't wait to
He
hold me in
didn't
the palm
force
of his
her.
hand and give
She
me all
did
the
it
best.
willingly, didn't
Although
she?
she was dismissive
But why
at that
did her
time,
heart hurt so
she
much
saw
now?
how good Ming was
Was
to
it
her.
just because he was the
Maybe
father of the
this
child?
was the price. When she finally found out that she had fallen in love with
Chapter
Ming,
8:23.
God took back all
It
the good
didn't
things
take
that had
long
been
for
given to
Ming
her
to
in
go
order to
out.
punish her severely.
He didn't come back
The
for
laughter
several
from the
days.
variety show was
Just like
constantly
before,
coming from the TV.
he didn't greet her,
but
nor
Lily
did he
felt
say
bored.
anything to her.
She stared
He
at the
just
TV,
disappeared.
but there was no
Yu
focus.
Lily was in the villa,
Ming
and her
glanced
mood
at
was
her,
in a mess
stood
every
up,
day.
and walked over to her.
Every
Yu
day,
Lily didn't
she
notice
wondered
that
where
he
he
had
had
come to her
gone.
side.
Did he
The
fall
sudden
asleep
dark
in the
shadow
arms of
shocked
another
her.
woman?
Looking up,
Was he indulging
she found
in
that
debauchery
Ming
in a
had
place
reached
that
out.
she didn't know?
Yu Lily
However,
shrank and
what did it have
subconsciously
to do with
shouted,
her?
What
These
do you want
things
to
were
do?
not something that she could
Ming's
control,
eyes darkened,
were they?
and
He
he
must
reached
have
out
a
to
lot
press
of
the call bell
girlfriends
not far
outside.
from Yu Lily's
This
bed.
time,
After
I'm
pressing
afraid
the
he
bell,
wants to get engaged.
Ming turned around
But
and returned to the sofa
that
to sit
person would
down.
not be me.
Yu Lily
He would
breathed a
marry
sigh of
another
relief
woman
and
and
looked
keep a
up at the
mistress at the
infusion
same
bottle
time.
above her head.
And I was the
She
canary
found that there
he
was
kept.
only a bottom of
Her
the
wings
liquid
were
above,
broken and she
and
was
even
locked
she
in a
didn't
cage.
notice it. Suffering the
The nurse
scolding
quickly
around
came
her,
to help her
but
remove
at
the
this
needle
time,
and then went
she was
out.
pregnant with a
The
child
whole
that was
ward
doomed
was
to be born.
indescribably quiet.
The more she thought about
Only
it,
the sound
the
of the
more
variety show
uncomfortable
on the
she
TV
felt.
could be heard.
On the fourth day,
the laughter on the
Yu
TV
Lily went
was
to a
endless,
private clinic to
but
get
the
an abortion
atmosphere
pill.
in reality was
After
somewhat
taking
dull.
the first pill,
Ming
there was
closed
a
the
clear
computer
pain
and
in her
glanced at
abdomen.
her.
Curling
walked
up on
to
the
the
bed,
water dispenser
Yu
and
Lily
poured a
looked
glass
pale.
of water.
Looking
Then
at
he
herself
went to
in
a
the dressing
dressing
mirror
mirror
not
TV
far
and
away
fiddled with it.
She was sweating
Soon,
all over. He walked
However,
to Yu
at
Lily.
this time,
He handed
Lily
her a
felt
glass
that
of
she was
water
humble
and a
and
packet of
incompetent.
medicine. Not
Yu
only
Lily
could she
looked at
not
the
get the
Western
person she
medicine,
liked,
pursed her lips,
but she could not
took
keep
the
the
water,
father of the
and
child.
stared at the medicine.
Now she could
Just
not even
looking
keep
at
her
it
own
made her
child.
mouth bitter.
Yu Lily was
Ming
swept
opened the
by
bag and
despair.
poured all the pills
She
into
gently
her hand.
closed her eyes.
He didn't
and
say
a
a
drop
word
of
the whole
tears
time.
slipped quietly. On the second day after she took the pill,
Yu Lily looked
Ming
at the medicine
suddenly came
and
back.
drank a glass of water.
At that time,
Finally,
Yu Lily had just
she
taken a
smacked her
bath,
lips and looked
and
painful.
Ming came back from
Ming
outside.
poured her another glass
Seeing
of
her in a
water,
bathrobe and
but
her
he
hair was
wasn't in a
half
hurry
wet,
to give it to her.
he went up and hugged her from
Instead,
behind.
he put it in the
The
cart and
fragrance of the
walked
shower
out.
gel came
When
from her
he came
body
back,
into Ming's
he was
nose.
holding something in his
Ming
hand.
stretched his head
After
out
bringing
and
the
leaned
water
over to
over,
gently kiss her cheek and
he
her
opened
lips.
his palm.
Yu Lily avoided him with some disgust. Finally, she couldn't help saying what she had been thinking for a long time. Chapter
Oh, let's break
842.
Yu
Ming
Lily
clung
reached
to her
out
and
to grab
kept
the
kissing
candy.
her, but
He
Ming
turned her
took it
over.
back, stroked her
Yu
waist with
Lily
his
was
big
annoyed
hands,
and looked
and
up at
slowly
him.
moved his hands
Ming
to
did
stir
not
up the
speak,
fire.
but handed
Aware
the
of
water to her
Ming's
and
presumptuous
glanced at the medicine
actions,
in her hand.
Yu Lily felt
His
even
meaning
more
was
uncomfortable.
self-evident.
In the end,
Seeing this,
he only
Yu
had a
Lily
physical
reluctantly
need
took
for
the
her.
water and swallowed
Yu
the
Lily
medicine.
avoided his
But
movement,
she saw that
and
Ming
there was
had already
disgust in
removed
her
the wrapper
eyes.
of the milk candy.
She pushed him away.
Shocked, Yu Lily
I'm
reached
serious,
out and
Oh
grabbed
Ming.
the candy,
Ming
removed
paused
the
and
remaining
looked into
wrapper,
her eyes
and put it in her mouth.
Yu Lily's beautiful
Ming
big
eyes
eyes were looking
unconsciously
at her,
softened his
and
eyes.
her eyes were full of
After
seriousness.
throwing away the cup,
Ming
he
looked
looked at her for a long time and went out.
I won't allow
Soon
it.
a nurse came in and looked at
He
Yu
held
Lily.
her firmly in his
Oh
arms
Ming
and
should have
whispered in her
left.
ear.
So,
Give it up.
he sent someone to
Lily
monitor
pushed him
me,
away with both
pursing
hands
her
and
lips
said
seriously.
Yu Lily turned
I
on the
don't
TV
want to be with
watch
you,
out of
Oh
boredom.
Ming.
But she
I'm
didn't
serious.
like any of the channels.
Let me go. Looking around,
I can't stand
Yu
it
Lily
anymore.
finally looked at Oh Ming's
you go.
notebook. Oh
Asking
Ming
the nurse
sneered
to
and
bring it
lifted
to
her
her.
chin with his
Yu
big
Lily
hand.
put down the small dining table and turned on the computer.
Are you mistaken?
However, she
It's
found
not
that
that I
there was a
don't want to let you
password.
go. Oh
But you
Ming's
can't
computer
leave me at
password.
all.
Do you
It
think you
shouldn't
can
be the
still
same
live so
password as
comfortably
before.
without me?
Yu Lily
Yu
frowned
Lily's
and
heart
entered his
ached.
mobile phone number.
She stared at him with her
Error.
eyes wide
She
open and
entered it
retorted,
again.
Who do you
It was
think
his
you are?
birthday.
No one can
Error.
survive without
Oh Ming
them.
wrong.
Oh Ming did
you
not
are
like
too
to change
full of
passwords,
yourself.
and these had some special meaning for him. However, there were a
Chapter
few
8:24.
possible passwords that were
As he
displayed
spoke,
incorrectly.
he had pushed her down
Could
on the
it be
bed and
that
whispered, He had
If you
changed
leave
his
me,
password?
do you think you will
In the
still have
past
those
few
famous
years?
brands?
Had he
Do you think
remembered
it is
other
so
numbers
easy to
very
earn money
clearly?
in this world?
Yu Lily thought
Don't
about
be
it
too
and
naive,
entered the
Yu Ming.
password she had used
I know
before.
you too well.
The computer was
Anger
turned on
rushed
with
up
a
to
light
his chest
sound.
and surged out.
Yu Lily's heart
Yu
was
Lily
beating
couldn't help
wildly.
but blush.
Looking
And she
at the
slapped
open
him hard in the
page,
face.
she sat
Oh
blankly.
Ming was beaten
In the
until he
past,
closed his eyes.
the password he
but his
often
face
used
suddenly
recently
became
was her
gloomy.
birthday.
It didn't
He actually,
hurt, but for a person
still
like
used
Oh
this
Ming,
password.
this slap
Why?
was tantamount
The
to great
palpitation
humiliation.
that should not have been
Oh Ming
ignited
angrily
quickly
grabbed her
in her
hand and growled
Yu
with a
Lily's
sullen
mind
face.
became more and more
Am
chaotic.
I wrong?
Looking
You,
at the
a
screen
woman,
full of
are
information
vain,
and
love
documents,
face,
and
and
think
the
that you
email
have pages that had
self-esteem.
not been closed
But in
yet.
fact, you feel
However,
so inferior that you can only use famous brands to cover up your lack of confidence.
Capital Ren Technology
Every
Company,
word that Oh Ming
Limited
said hit
acquisition
Yu
plan.
Lily's sore spot.
Capital
Yu
Ren.
Lily's face became pale
Isn't this
inch by
Lida's
inch.
company?
Oh
How
Ming
could
saw
it
the
be?
change of her
How
expression,
could Oh Ming
and there
acquire
was a
such a
flash
small
of coldness
company?
in his eyes.
Even Yu Lily
He
looked
continued
down
to
on
say,
such a company.
"People like you
let
can do
alone
anything
Oh
for
Ming.
money. If it
Do you
weren't for
dare
his
to
high
say that
salary,
when you were with me,
Yu Lily
it was
wouldn't
not
have stayed
because I
there.
treated you well.
Now,
And it
Oh
was
Ming
not
was
because I
buying
gave
this
you
kind
money
of
so that you
lousy
didn't have to
company?
worry about food
Why?
and clothing?
Could it really be
Yu
that he
Lily's
had too much
breathing
money
became
and was
more and
buying
more
it for
rapid.
fun?
She
Yu
looked
Lily
at him
clicked
and
on it
loudly
and found that the
refuted.
document had already been downloaded by Oh Ming.
Who are you kidding?
When she opened it,
You
the
obviously
estimated
thought that I
price
was
7
operating
years older
costs
than
were
you.
far lower than
You
what
don't
you
know
Lily
that you
knew.
have the habit of
And it
talking
was
in your
much
sleep.
lower. Do you?
Although Lida's
Why,
company
after
wasn't
leaving
big,
me,
it
did you
shouldn't
go
be
to
so
find
cheap,
that Lu guy?
right?
Moreover,
Oh Ming clamped her chin,
Lida's importance
and his
to this
eyes
company
were full of
couldn't be
sarcasm.
underestimated.
You can
He
only
wouldn't
sell for
easily
such a
agree
high
to
price
sell
with
it.
me.
Could it
How
be
much
that
money do you think that
he
Lu
had gone
guy can give
bankrupt?
you?
Only I, Oh Ming, can satisfy you, whether it's financially or
Lily's heart was
physically.
beating very
As he
fast.
said that, he
The
tore her
more she
bathrobe
read,
with his big
the more
hand,
shocked she
put his
was.
knee on her lower abdomen,
Suddenly,
and
out
whispered,
of the corner of her eye,
"Calm down, you
she
Lily.
saw Oh Ming's
When
figure.
did I not treat you well?"
Shocked, she
Isn't
quickly
it good
closed
to
the
stay with
document
me?
and pressed the
Why
sleep
do you
button.
have to make me angry?
While he was walking over,
You were not so
she turned on the
disobedient
computer
before.
again and pretended
Oh
to enter
Ming
the
squinted
password.
and looked at Yu Lily in front of him. He saw that her face became paler and paler, and there were big beads of sweat on her forehead.
Chapter
Oh Ming was
843.
shocked, reached out to touch
Yu
her
Lily
forehead
pretended to
and
be
asked,
calm.
"What's
Pressed
wrong?"
the enter key a few times.
Cold,
and said,
her forehead
"What is your
felt
password?"
extremely cold.
I can't
Oh
open
Ming
it.
was shocked.
Oh
But he
Ming
found that the
squinted at her
smile
for a
on her
moment,
face was getting
then
wider
went
and
forward
wider.
and closed the
On her
computer.
pale face,
He took the
it looked
computer and
strange
sat
and
on the edge
cruel.
of the sofa.
Yu Lily
not
laughed
answering
loudly.
her question.
Her laughter
The
was
nurse
sick,
saw Oh Ming
weak,
coming over,
and pale.
said hello at the same time,
He lowered his
and
head
went
and
out.
looked down.
At this
Oh Ming
moment,
followed her
Oh Ming
gaze
had
and
changed
looked
his
down.
clothes.
At a glance,
He should have found a
he
place
saw
to
a
take a
shocking
shower
patch
and
of
change
blood
clothes.
red,
And
his
he
heart
looked much
skipped a
cleaner
beat,
and more
and
refreshed.
he almost fell off
Yu
the
Lily
bed.
pretended to be
Blood.
disdainful,
So
lay
much
down,
blood,
and pulled the
looking
quilt
at the
up to
blood.
cover half of her face.
Oh Ming widened
But
his
she did
eyes
not
in
turn her back
disbelief.
like before.
Oh Ming,
but
do you
quietly
know?
tucked the quilt,
I'm pregnant.
peeking out a pair of eyes.
Oh Ming stood rooted
Oh
to the
Ming
ground,
seemed to notice
looking
her
at the
gaze
large
and
pool
looked
of blood
over.
below her.
Yu Lily
Not
noticed
knowing
it
what to
and
do.
quickly closed her
Your
eyes.
child has been
Pretending
squashed to
to
death
sleep.
by you.
Oh Ming felt something was wrong and
Are
entered
you
the
happy?
password to open
Looking
the computer.
at Oh Ming's expression,
the page on the computer
Yu Lily
seemed to be
suddenly
different
felt a
from when
sense
he
of
just
revenge.
left. But
It
at the
was
same
opened.
time, there was
Password.
also an
He looked
indescribable
at Yu
sorrow.
Lily, who was
This
pretending
was
to
also her
sleep on the
child.
bed, her first
What did
child.
you see? Some
Oh
people
Ming
say
slid
that
his
the birth
finger
of
on the
every
touch pad
child
and
is a
asked
gift from
slowly.
the heavens to their
Yu
parents.
Lily felt a little
But
guilty.
now, for the
but
sake of her
still
so-called
pretended to be
freedom,
calm.
she had
She opened her
removed
eyes
this
and looked at
blessing.
him with a puzzled
Happy.
look.
Happy.
What?
She
Oh
didn't
Ming
know if Oh
slightly
Ming would
raised
be
his
happy,
eyebrows and
but
chuckled.
she herself
But
didn't
his
feel the
face
joy
was
she had
cold.
imagined.
Don't
On the
touch my things
contrary,
in the future.
there was an
His voice
indescribable
was gloomy,
sorrow.
with displeasure. Oh Ming's sullen face made Yu Lily feel
Chapter
even more guilty.
825.
She sneered.
She had successfully
Who wants it?
retaliated against
Although
this man
she said
and
successfully
she
hurt
couldn't
this
help
man,
but feel jealous.
Yu Lily wanted to
She
laugh,
turned around with the
but she
quilt
couldn't
and closed her
anymore.
eyes.
The pain
Lily,
was like falling.
you really think
as
too
if something
highly of
was
yourself.
passing away quickly.
When Li Xichen
Under
woke
such
up,
severe pain,
he saw a few
Yu
WeChat
Lily
messages
lost
on his
consciousness.
phone. When
It
she
was
woke
Oh
up,
Ming.
she was
After
in
calling
surgery.
several times
The
and no one
doctor
answered.
said there were 2
He simply
pregnancy
threw the phone
sacs.
aside and
They
turned
were the
around to
twins
hug his
that
wife.
Oh Ming had always
Xueqi
wanted.
was still in a
Hearing the
daze.
doctor's words, words.
Being
Yu
hugged
Lily's
like
heart
this,
was sad.
she habitually
and she
burrowed
couldn't help
into his
crying
arms
on the
and then
operating
fell
table.
asleep again.
Twins.
Li
They
Xiqing
are
held her
actually
in his
twins.
arms and
2
unconsciously hugged
children.
her.
How
His big
lucky she
hands
was to get
stroking
2
her waist.
children.
But
Well,
she
she
couldn't
was
keep
fat
them at all.
again.
I'm
So
sorry,
fat.
I'm sorry.
She moaned and
After
took
being
his hand
sedated,
away.
Yu Lily passed
He
out.
lowered his head and
When
whispered,
she woke up,
"Get up,
O
Mrs.
Ming
Li."
was not around.
"Shut up."
The next day,
She reached out
O
and
Ming
covered his
came
mouth,
to the hospital.
refusing to open her
He
eyes.
looked at Yu Lily with
He turned
unspeakable
over and
hatred
pinched
in
her
his
nose,
eyes.
saying,
Yu
"You're
Lily
getting
clearly
lazier."
noticed the change in his mood
Well,
and sat
go
on the bed
away.
silently. I want to
"You
sleep.
Lily, do you
She
know what you
frowned
have
and
done?"
waved him off. O Ming's eyes were
He
red,
chuckled and
and
stopped
he looked at
teasing
her with hatred and
After
anger.
washing up,
Do you know
he
what
went
you have done?
outside.
He took
Yu
the kids
Lily's
out for a
heart
run,
skipped a beat,
but just
and her
after running
breathing
one
suddenly
lap,
became
he
rapid.
received a call.
She turned her
It
head
was
away
O
from
Ming.
him. When
Am
Li
I not
Jianyue
good
saw
enough
that
to
her
you,
father
you
had
Lily?
gone to answer the phone,
After so many
she
years of
immediately
affection,
took the lead to
is
slack
it not
off.
as good as your first
She
love
called
that you
Brother
can't
Mosin
get?
to catch
Why
worms
did you
together.
hurt my child?
After hanging up,
Why did you?
he looked at the kids running
Ming's
around
eyes
and was
were
about to put
scarlet,
his phone back
staring
when it
at
rang
her
again.
with unforgivable
This
hatred
time it
and
was Changyu.
incomprehensible
It
complexity.
had been a while since
He
Changyu
looked at
returned
her
to the
with
company
misty
to work.
eyes. Why didn't you tell me that the child is innocent?
Perhaps
If you had
because
told
of
me,
Rue,
everything
her
that
working
happened now
ability
would
was
not have happened.
inferior to before,
You Lily
but
turned
more
to look at
efficient than
him.
before.
Her eyes
As
were
soon
burning,
as he picked up,
but she couldn't
he
help
heard a
but
piece
have a
of
bright and
explosive
beautiful
news.
smile on her face.
Boss, we found
with
Bo
a strong
Xiao.
sense of
Bo
sarcasm.
Xiao.
She looked at him as if she was looking at a fool.
Ha, Oh Ming, do you really think you are so charming? Such words fell
Chapter
into Oh Ming's ears,
844.
and it was
In
like
the
a spark
colorful
falling
Yunnan,
into gunpowder,
the sun was shining
which made
brightly.
his eyelids twitch.
In the shabby
Don't
alley,
F
there were
asterisk
10
King
children
tease
running
me.
around.
My purpose
laughing
from
and
the
playing,
beginning is
and
very
the sound
clear.
of children crying
I want
could
your
be
money.
heard.
Today's
Now that I
weather
have
was
enough
very
money
good,
to spend, and the
it is
sun was
normal
very
that
bright,
I want to break up with
an
you.
old man dressed
Why do
in
I want to
beautiful
have
and
your
neat ethnic
child?
clothes moved
I
a
am
small
not so
stool and
cheap.
sat in front of the door.
I did it on purpose.
Watching the children playing, and from time to time
You
said
Lily
a few
laughed,
words that could not
and
be
her
understood.
eyes were wet.
Rong Anna
She
was
laughed
drying
louder
clothes
and
on the
louder,
roof, with sick
humming a
revenge.
tune. After drying all the clothes, she
I
stood
don't
on the
want your
railing on the
child,
edge of the roof,
so I want to abort
looked
it.
at the golden
Who
sun
let you
hanging in
touch
the
me?
distance, and
Now
stretched.
it's not my fault.
With one hand on
You
her
killed
slightly
your own
bulging
child
belly,
with your own
Rong
hands.
Anna's body was
Are
warmed
you
by the sun,
satisfied with
and
my
at the same
answer?
time,
Are
her
you
face was
happy?
also full of the glory of
Oh
maternal
Ming
love.
glared at her and
In
took
the
a big
distance,
step forward.
there were domestic dogs barking.
He stretched out
and
his
the
hand
sound
and
of electrical
strangled her
horns
neck.
came up.
You Lily
The
widened
mood was
her
quiet
eyes
and
looked
looked
at
at him
him
incredulously.
It was good.
Oh Ming's
If she could
eyes
live
were
like
scarlet.
this forever,
His
it would be a
originally
good
clear
choice.
peach blossom
In a
eyes were now
beautiful small
filled with
city.
hatred. Doing
Hatred,
a small
it was
business.
true hatred.
With a husband and
This
children
man
by her
hated her.
side, working
She
at
struggled with her
sunrise and
hands
resting
and
at
feet,
sunset,
and the pain in her throat
However,
made her breathless.
the cruel reality had turned this simple idea
His
into an
fingernails
extravagant
gripped
hope.
his hands tightly
Rong
and
Anna
sank
looked
deep
down
into
and
his flesh,
inadvertently saw
but
a few
Oh Ming
men in
only
simple
tightened his
casual
grip.
clothes,
He wanted
looking at
to
each
kill
other
her.
and carefully
He was
hiding at the end of the
serious.
alley.
You
Some
Lily
of them were
closed her
smoking,
eyes in despair,
but their postures
and
were
tears
tall and
flowed down
straight.
from the corner of
They
her
were
eyes.
all very healthy and
Suddenly,
strong.
there was a
One of
cry
them
of
was holding a
surprise at the
mobile phone
door.
and making a phone call, and just on the other side of the box, there was another line of people
Chapter
standing.
826.
Rong Anna immediately
You
had
Lily's
an
head
ominous
was buzzing.
premonition.
After her
After
neck
looking
was
around,
released, she finally
coughed
saw a car that
violently.
looked like a police
The pain
car
in her
about
throat
2
went
alleys
straight
away.
to her heart and
but
made
she
her
could only
tears
see a
flow.
little bit. Fresh
And
air
it was
came
difficult
in.
to see the whole
You
picture.
Lily's eyes were red,
Shocked,
and she
Rong
stared
Anna
at him,
carried the basket
covering
to
her
dry
neck,
clothes and ran
Oh
down
Ming
from
was
the top
held down
floor.
by several
Back
doctors
to the
at the
small
moment,
house she rented.
staring at her with
Rong Anna
scarlet
pushed the
eyes.
door and went in.
You Lily's face
Bo
showed a
Xiao was on the
retaliatory
phone in the
smile,
room,
and she whispered
and his
cruelly,
face didn't seem to be
"Oh
very
Ming,
good.
you will regret
Rong
it."
Anna went in
You
and
will
saw his
regret it,
expression,
and I will
but
never
she didn't
forgive you
speak
again.
immediately.
No matter
Bo
how you
Xiao's
beg
mood
me,
seemed to be rotten,
I will never
and he
forgive
shouted
you
at the
again.
phone.
Old Sue,
You Lily,
you are so
swear
boring
here.
at least.
However,
Hello.
Oh Ming
The
seemed
phone
to
was
hear a
hung
joke
up,
and sneered.
and Bo Xiao was
Regret?
furious and scolded.
The only thing
Damn
I
it.
regret is having sex with a
Xiao,
woman
what
like you.
happened?
The
Old
sharp
Sue's
words
group of
like a sharp
grandsons.
sword.
Didn't they
went
say
straight
they were
through
going
her
to pick
heart
up our goods last
mercilessly.
time?
They
They
haven't
haven't
moved
moved
for
for
so
so
long.
more and more pale.
I just called to
Oh
ask,
Ming looked at her
and he
with
said he
hatred and
doesn't want the
sadness.
goods anymore.
Because of you,
Such
I
asterisk
killed
T.
my brother.
When Rong
Unless
Anna
my
heard
second
this,
brother
her
comes
face
back to life.
changed.
Otherwise,
Old Sue's goods
I will
could
have
be
nothing
moved
to
out
do with
last
you in this
time.
life. So we took
Get
over.
out.
Don't
How can
appear in
he?
Kingstown in the
Now
future,
that you see that
or
we
I will
can't do
find
it,
someone to
you
kill
don't want
you.
to work with us
B
anymore.
asterisk TCH.
When we make a comeback,
B asterisk
we will
TCH.
definitely take revenge.
He called me a B
Bo
asterisk
Xiao
TCH.
placed his hands on the
You
table
Lily
and scratched
covered her
his
neck,
head in frustration.
and tears flowed down.
No, we can't
However,
just sit here
she
and do
soon caught
nothing.
another point in this sentence. Unless my second brother comes
Anna,
back to life, let's go. You Lily
Rong
couldn't
Anna
believe it and
frowned all
asked,
the time.
Li Xiqing is
She
dead?
stepped
forward and said,
Oh Ming felt
Xiao,
more
there
like
may
a
be
fool,
police outside,
madly
trying to push away
Bo
the doctors
Xiao
who
was
grabbed
shocked
his
and
hands.
looked up at her.
But it was in vain.
What?
Rong Anna
He
grabbed
simply
his
stopped
hand,
struggling
looked at
and
him
looked
and
at you
said,
Lily with
on
cold
both
eyes.
sides of the alley,
He is
there's
dead
no one
because of
blocking
me
the
and
back
because
door.
of you.
Now
The
let's
two
go
children
from the
in my
back
second
door.
wife's belly,
A
seeing
boy and a
this,
girl.
Bo Xiao
Because of
also
you,
understood understood the seriousness of the matter before they were born. How can you be so vicious? How can you? Because of her, the two children became posthumous children. Chapter 845. During that time, as soon as they opened the door, quiet and dark, they saw three men staying in the hospital for a few days. They were wearing casual clothes. Bought a ticket to Dolly, but all of them looked at them coldly. Leaving, she went to the old house of the Lee family to see Xueqi, and their hands clasped tightly together. Much stronger than she had imagined. One of the leaders took out his police ID and said, eyes were swollen like peaches. Of the XX crime squad. Now there is sufficient evidence that you are suspected of smuggling, drug trafficking, and she did not tell Xueqi about her miscarriage. Please come with us. After saying goodbye, seeing this, Lily took her luggage and went to the airport hurriedly. A little girl was sitting in the departure lounge. Did you find the wrong MP3 player and playing music in a low voice? Rongana, what else could I have done?
Let's
In
go.
the end, you end
A
up
few
as a
people
lover.
came up and
You never
surrounded them
think,
from left
why
and
am
right.
I doing this?
The rest of the
Love
people
you till the
searched the
end.
room.
Not painful at all. The
Anna
messages
and Bo
arguing.
Xiao were both
Who loved
arrested
once,
and
I
quickly
only have one
escorted
face
downstairs.
left. No look
Many
of regret.
people gathered around
You
and
can't
recognized
recognize
Rong
Anna and Bo
After
Xiao
listening
at a
to your
glance.
love song,
The two
I got in
temporary
the car.
guests who were
Loving
incompatible
you
with
was
them.
worth it.
Rong
One
Anna and
night,
Bo
I
Xiao
had a
were
dream.
forced into the police
You
car.
are white-haired
and the
and
two
say,
were
"Take
sitting
me
in
to
the front
wonder
and back.
I still won't hesitate."
Without any precaution,
I'll follow you
they
to
were
heaven.
taken to the police
No
station.
matter what,
Chang
Yu felt a little lost
dawn.
all day.
At lunch at home,
Sitting
Rong
in the
Rui
waiting
noticed
room,
something was
Yu
wrong with
Lily's
her.
throat was sore.
Giving her a piece of
She
meat,
raised
he
her
asked
head,
casually, closed her eyes,
"Are you thinking
and
of me?"
slightly opened her
She
mouth
glanced
to
at
let
him
the
and
air
called,
in.
Her heart and
Rui.
eyelids were
Yes.
terribly sore.
Why did you like
Get
me
out.
in the first place?
Don't appear in Kingstown
Because
in the
you are
future,
good-looking,
or I will find
Rong
someone to
Rui
kill
replied
you.
without thinking,
Bitch.
coaxing the
Goodbye,
child while
Ming.
eating.
Really?
Yes. Not because of
Chapter
other purposes.
8:27.
Chang Yu
Beep.
looked at him.
Beep.
A little
Beep.
emotional.
The sound of the
Rong
heartbeat
Rui
machine
paused,
came steadily.
and his amber eyes
Yu Lily
deepened.
opened her eyes and
Looking
saw
at
a
her,
man
he
in a white
asked,
coat and a
"What
mask.
did he say to you?"
After seeing her
Chang
wake
Yu
up
heard
and
the
giving her a
words,
series of
shook her
tests,
head,
and
Yu
felt a
Lily's
little
mind was
frustrated.
still muddy. No,
She
I
is in
found
the
it
hospital.
myself.
Not
You
dead
and Rong
yet.
Anna are cousins.
Sure enough,
The
you
lower
provided
the
the
life,
news of
the
Rong
harder
Anna
it is
and
to
Bo
die.
Xiao to the police.
Yu Lily closed her
You gave
eyes
them
and
money
fell
to
asleep
let them
again.
escape.
When
And
she
then
woke up
reported their
again,
movements.
it was dark.
Why did you do
She
this?
tried to sit up.
Isn't she
but
your
she
cousin?
had
no strength.
Yes, sitting up.
Rong Rui put
Yu
down
Lily
his
found that the
chopsticks,
light in the
looked
ward
at her,
was not
and
turned
said,
on.
Rong
And it should
Anna
be
is my
evening.
cousin.
And
It was
Xueqi
gray.
is also my
The
cousin.
single bed,
Anna
the good
and Bo
equipment,
Xiao have
and
made
the
a big
unusual
mistake.
bed all let her
I
know
gave
that
them
this
money
was at
to
least
test
an
them.
intensive care unit.
The amount of cash
This
I gave
kind
them
of
was
war
enough for
cost
them
at
to
least a
escape.
few thousand yuan
If
a
they had
day.
withdrawn the money
Yu
from
Lily
abroad,
was shocked and
I would have
climbed
pretended
down.
that nothing had
After
happened.
pulling out the
But they
needle
were
in her
still in
hand,
the country.
she pressed the needle.
The border between
found a pair of
China
shoes,
and Myanmar.
opened the door quietly,
So,
and
you
went
betrayed
out.
them?
Looking
They
at
or
it,
you, I
it
can
was
only
really an
choose one
intensive
side.
care unit.
Rong Rui
Because it
gazed
was a
at her and said,
VIP special
Bo
zone,
Xiao is
there were not
extremely
many
mean
people
and very
coming and
vengeful.
going here. If he is
Yu
still in the
Lily's heart
country,
was beating
he will
fast,
definitely
and she
hurt Li
quietly
Siqing
walked
and
out,
Xueqi.
carefully looked
They are
around,
very
found a
important
safe
to you,
passage, and
aren't they?
tiptoed in.
If they had
Miss,
left the realm,
a woman's
I
voice
could have made
suddenly
it so
rang
that they would
out.
never be able to
Yu
return.
Lily's heart
But
skipped
they
a beat.
didn't. And she
It's
quickly
obvious
ran
that
down
they
the
have
stairs.
other plans.
Yu Lily didn't
Rong
know how
Rui's
long she
eyes
had been lying
darkened.
in bed.
No matter
But
what
she
their
had
plans
no
are,
strength.
they are doomed
Her
to
legs
fail.
were soft, and she directly knelt down, and the whole body tilted and rolled down the stairs. Instead of letting them make mistakes
Yu
again
Lily
and again,
screamed,
it is
lying
better
on the
to let
ground
them
in
spend the
pain,
rest of their
and
lives
tears
in prison.
came out.
Did you
A
know
nurse
that
ran
Rong
in,
Anna is
saw her
pregnant,
lying on the ground,
Chang Yu
and
couldn't
was
bear
shocked.
it, and quickly ran
Rong
down.
Anna will give
But
birth
when
in
Yu
prison.
Lily saw it,
Why at
she was
this
also
time?
shocked and hurriedly crawled down. The nurse saw it and was even more shocked and shouted, "Oh, why are you running? Stop!" Only
Chapter
a fool will stop.
8:46.
Yu Lily stood
Chang
up,
Yu was humorous
held the
and did
handrail,
not speak
and
again.
ran down.
Rong
But she was
little
really
face
weak,
turned red
and
and
was
she
caught
began
up by
to
the
cry.
nurse in a few steps.
She waved her little
The
fists
nurse
and
panted
kicked her
and
legs
blocked her way.
unhappily.
She was a
Rong
little
Rui
unhappy
coaxed the
and
child,
scolded,
stood up,
and
"Why
sent
are
the
you
child
running?
to Cheng Yu,
No one
whispering,
wants to kill you.
"Come on,
Go
mommy will
back."
hold you." Yu Lily's
Cheng Yu
tone
took
was
the
a
child
little
over,
fierce, and the little
she
baby
curled her
suddenly
hands
became
around
the
the
handrail of the
well-behaved.
stairs and
A
looked
pair of
aggrieved.
amber-colored watery
Unwilling
eyes,
to let go,
which
she
were the
said,
same as Rong
"Sister
Rui's,
nurse,
looked
please
at
let
her
me go."
and blinked.
You're
Chang
right.
Yu's heart was
I will be
almost
killed
melted
if I
by the
stay
cuteness.
here any longer. She chuckled and tapped her little nose. She didn't have the money to pay for the medical
at the
fees.
company?
It would
Yes,
be better
they
to
went to
just
the
be
capital.
killed directly.
Chang Yu held
Yu
the
Lily
child
held
and
onto
lifted
the
the little
handrail,
guy up.
looked at the nurse, and
It
said
seems that they
pitifully,
went to help Ming.
"Let me go, okay?
I don't know
Just
the
pretend that you
specifics.
never saw me.
Anyway,
You
there
go
is
up
nothing
now,
to do in the
and
company
I'll go
these 2
down
days.
now. So
Just
I was
pretend that
lazy.
we never met.
Okay.
You
Must
Lily
you
slept
force me
until
to
the
do this?
afternoon.
The
Her
nurse
stomach
suddenly
was
felt a
growling,
little funny,
but
and
she
looked
did
at
not
her,
want to get up and
shaking
wake
her
up.
head speechlessly.
Vaguely,
The
she
nurse
seemed to
ignored
hear
her
her
and
familiar
picked up her
voice.
phone to call the
It was a
higher-ups.
soft female
Yu
voice.
Lily took the
Yu
opportunity
Lily
to climb
opened her
down,
eyes and looked
but the
toward the
nurse's
source of the
hand
sound.
quickly caught her.
Just one
"Hello?
glance was enough to
Come
wake
down
her
to the
up.
3rd floor
Yu
of the
Lily
VIP
got up
room
and
to help.
exclaimed,
Qian.
Su
There's a
Chensi heard
patient
Yu
who
Lily's
just woke
cry
up and
turned her head to
escape.
look over.
I just
With a
happened to
smile on
catch
her
him.
face, she immediately
Yes,
saw Yu Lily's
he's in
hair
room
and said,
V8.
"Did you get a haircut?
Then bring his family
Short hair
here.
is so beautiful.
I'm afraid it'll be a
Yu
little
Lily
troublesome."
rubbed her messy short hair,
Family?
combed it,
Yu Lily
and
looked
looked
up and
behind Su
shouted,
Chensi.
I don't
Li
have
Xiqing
family.
and O Ming
They
were
are
sitting on the
definitely
sofa,
not my family.
talking about something.
But as soon
Su
as she
Chensi
finished
walked
speaking,
over to Yu Lily
she
and
heard
said,
the sound of
"How
leather
do you
shoes
feel?
coming from above.
Do you feel
Yu
uncomfortable
Lily's heart
anywhere?"
skipped a beat.
Yu
And she
Lily
looked
saw
up with
Su
an ominous
Chensi
feeling.
and was inexplicably moved. After being ridiculed by O Ming for so long,
Chapter
it was the first time that Yu
828.
Lily had heard such
Sure
a
enough,
greeting.
after a while,
It was a lie
they
to
saw
say
a
that she
doctor
was
in a
not
large
moved.
white coat leading
Yu
a tall
Lily
and
had never
straight
felt
figure
so
walking
close
down
to
the
Su
stairs.
Chensi. The figure
Sniffling,
behind the
her
doctor
eyes
was
were
wearing
red.
a dark
Yu
colored
Lily shook her
striped
head and
suit.
said, No.
He stood upright with
Xueqi
one
saw
hand
her
in his
red eyes
pocket
and smiled.
looked down from the
She
stairwell
seemed a little
above.
helpless and said,
His peach blossom
"If not,
eyes were slightly
pack up and
cold,
leave the hospital."
and she couldn't see his
"You don't
emotions.
feel good in the hospital."
Lily's heart
"If
seemed
there
to
is
be
no
grasped.
major problem,
When she saw
don't
that
stay in the
figure,
hospital."
her heart ached
"I
terribly.
can be discharged?"
It's him.
Did he
Lily's
save
eyes
me?
lit up.
Why,
Of
You
course.
Lily lowered her head
She went
slightly
to the back
and looked
took
away.
a paper bag.
Her eyes were
I
stinging,
bought you some clothes.
and her throat seemed to be
Put them
blocked
on,
by something.
and let's go eat
the
together.
nurse waved to Ming and
Yeah.
said,
Family
Lily
member,
was a little
come here
excited
quickly.
and took the paper
This
bag to
patient
the
actually
bathroom.
wants to run.
Lily hadn't
Take her back
showered for
quickly.
several days.
She just woke
She
up
didn't
and
know
needs
if it
to
was
be
an illusion
examined.
or not.
But
Ming
she felt
walked
that her
down
body
slowly,
stank.
looked at Lily,
There was a towel
and
in the
asked slowly,
bathroom.
"Why
You
run?"
Lily wet it,
wrung
a
it
familiar
out,
voice,
and wiped her body.
but not a familiar
After
tone.
making sure there was no
His
smell,
tone was no longer
he
as
changed
evil
into
as
the
it was in the
clothes
past.
Xueqi brought.
Nor was it as doting
Inside
as it
and
was
out,
in the past.
but
it was
as
as if
if
there
there
was
was
a
a
thin layer of
Looking
frost.
at the numbers,
They
they
were
were
all
all
the
the
smallest.
smallest.
Lily
Lily
tugged
tugged
at
at
her
her
clothes,
and
she
she
swallowed
swallowed
a
a
mouthful
mouthful
of
of
saliva.
again.
After
As
a
soon
while
as they
she
walked
said,
out,
I don't have
everyone's
money
eyes fell
to
on
pay for the
Lily.
medical expenses.
Ming's heart ached as he
It was
watched.
a simple sentence, but it was like a heavy hammer that hit Ming's heart.
In just a few days,
in an instant,
Lily
his
had
heart
lost
clearly
even
felt
more weight.
sore and swollen.
Under his ear-length
Ming's
short
eyes
hair,
narrowed slightly.
his face
and with
was
a
as
cold
sharp as a
face,
palm.
He took
and
her
the
wrist
dark
and
circles
stepped up
under his
without
eyes
saying
looked
anything.
a little scary.
He pulled her, but she didn't move. Lily lowered her head with red eyes, and the other hand was tightly wrapped around the handrail. Chapter
Go back.
847. Ming said in a low
Xueqi
voice,
was wearing a light
and his
cyan
tone was
cashmere
indisputable.
coat with a beautiful
He
lace
pulled
dress
her
inside.
again. Her
But
long
Lily
hair
just
fell
leaned
over her
forward,
shoulders,
and then she tightly
making her
grasped
look
the
gentle
handrail,
and delicate.
gritted her teeth,
With
and
a
said,
radiant face
"I don't
and
know when
delicate
you became
facial
so
features.
nosy."
She was really
Ming
beautiful.
stopped and turned to
Originally,
look at her.
he didn't feel
Lily's
it when he
throat
was
was a
wearing
little
a
dry,
loose hospital
and
gown.
her voice was low
Now,
and hoarse.
compared with Xueqi,
In the stairwell,
it was like a
there was
person
an
from
empty
two
echo.
different worlds.
Ming,
In the past,
just like before,
Lily was more beautiful
can't you
and
pretend that you
energetic
don't
than
know me?
Xueqi. Why do
But
you have
now,
to do so much?
it was the complete opposite.
Who asked you to save me?
Ming clearly
I don't
noticed the
want to
change
live
in this.
anymore. As she
He
said
lowered
that,
his head
her voice
slightly
was
and
choked,
quickly looked
and
away.
her eyes were slightly
Lily
red.
did not notice the
She
change
looked up
in
at him with
Ming's mood.
tears. She
Why
greeted
don't you just
Xueqi
let me
with some
die?
excitement, and
Why do you
naturally
have to
took
do
her
so
arm.
much?
When these
Xueqi and
words fell
Lily
into
walked out
Ming's ears,
first.
his heart,
She turned
which
to
had
the
been
two
tightly
men and
clenched,
shouted,
felt as if it
"Remember
had
to
been
go
bitten
through the
off by her.
formalities."
It was
I
bleeding,
will go with Lily
and it was so
first.
painful that it convulsed.
Looking at her
responded
deeply,
with a gentle look and
Ming
said,
tilted his body
"Be
slightly
careful."
and suddenly smiled.
I know. His devilish
Xueqi
smile
waved
was
her
slanted
hand and
upwards,
took Lily out.
bringing with it an
As soon as they
uninhibited
were out
and
of the
romantic
ward,
attitude.
Xueqi couldn't
His
help
shimmering
but grab
peach
her hand
blossom
and
eyes
say,
were looking at her,
"You are too thin.
as deep as a broken
You
ice
used to be
lake,
so beautiful.
cold and devoid of
Why
warmth.
did you torture yourself
Don't
to
you
become
know?
like this?
I've always
You
been
are
so
so kind
ugly that you are not
As
a
he
ghost."
spoke,
He raised
Hearing
her hand
that,
and gently
Lily
caressed
couldn't
it with
help
his
but touch
slightly
her
rough
face and
big
asked
hand.
worriedly.
He narrowed
Is it
his
really
eyes
ugly?
slightly and smiled.
Xueqi looked at her, nodded seriously,
Just
and
like
said,
how I bought you from a
"Yes,
bunch of
very
young
ugly.
ladies back then.
Lily
I
felt
saved
a little
you.
unhappy and
Shouldn't
said,
you be grateful?
"Lend me your cosmetics."
Ladies.
Xueqi smiled and
Those
said,
words stung
"Let's go to the
Lily's
place
heart
to
even
eat and
more.
wait for them."
She pulled
The
her
two
hand
men
back,
seemed to have
and her
something to
eyes
say.
became redder.
They should not
She
come
tried
so
to shake
soon.
off his hand.
We can wait
but
for
it was
them while we
tightly
do our
held.
makeup. The two of them hailed a taxi and went to a famous local
Chapter
authentic Cantonese
829.
restaurant to sit down.
Oh.
Lily's body
roared,
had not fully
and
recovered,
tears rolled down her
so she could
cheeks.
only try to eat
I don't
light
need
food.
you to remind me
After
what my
the two of them
surname
ordered,
is.
they took out the
Ming's
cosmetics
face
in the
suddenly
private room,
darkened,
and
and
he
Lily
stepped
went to
forward
the
to
bathroom
approach her
to
with a
wash her face
sarcastic
and
smile.
put on makeup.
"Do you want
She
me to pay
asked,
for you again?
"Qian,
Why did you
Ming,
suddenly
you-
come to the capital?
Before
Are you
Lily could say
accompanying your
anything,
husband on a business
Ming
trip?"
pulled her hand hard.
No.
And the hand that had been
Xueqi
tightly
looked
wrapped
at her
around
with
the
a
handrail
smile
was
on her
pulled out.
face. Then,
Ming asked me to
dragged
come.
her up the stairs.
Lily paused
The doctor
and looked
and
at
the
her
nurse
face.
looked at each other and
Xueqi
followed them
did not look
silently.
like she was joking
Lily
at all.
struggled and shouted
She
with
said,
red eyes.
"Let
He
me
said
go.
that you were not in
Ming,
good
you
condition
are a
and hoped that
pervert.
I could come to stay
You
with
are
you
crazy.
for a while.
Let
Of
me
course,
go,
Mr.
I
Lee
tell
would
you.
not let me
I
come
have no
alone,
money to pay for
so
the
he
medical
came with me.
expenses.
The
Ming
situation
dragged
is
her
not
up
too
the
good.
stairs.
Lily
Hearing
looked
her
away
words,
and smiled.
He rolled his
Looking
eyes
at the
and
small
sneered.
mirror, the face
It
in the
doesn't
mirror was
matter.
so haggard that
You
there was
Lily
no
stared at
spirit
him,
in it.
struggled and
It
shouted
looked
at
a
the
little
same scary.
I don't
It
need
wasn't
you.
just not good.
I don't need you
It
to
was
pay for
simply
me.
not good.
However,
If he
before
hadn't
Lily
stopped
finished
her,
her words,
she would have died
Ming said
several
again,
times over.
I'll lend it to
However,
you, and you
it
can
just
pay
so
it back
happened
slowly.
that she didn't want to die
It was
because
just
of
a
his
few
obstruction.
words,
But it
as
was
for
like
the
a few
reason,
slaps on her face.
even she herself
Yu
did not
Lily's
know.
face immediately
Seeing
burned
Yu
up.
Lily's meaningful
Ming
smile,
noticed that she was slightly
Xueqi
stunned,
did not answer,
looked back at her with a faint smile, and asked with an evil smile, "You don't think that I will help you pay for it, do you?" In one sentence, the last bit of hope that Yu Lily had was completely crushed. Yu Lily picked up the lipstick and put it on her hand.
This man always
She put her
knows how to
fingers
give
on
me
her
the
eyelids
greatest
and
humiliation.
asked, "What do you want to
Hearing
say?"
this,
Yu Lily
I
looked
also
up and
heard a little
sneered.
about you,
Sorry,
Ming's
I
feelings
just
for
wanted
you
to
are
say that
very
I don't
deep.
need your fake
If
kindness.
it wasn't something very
don't
important,
pretend.
he would never
Do you
have
think
come
I
to
don't
me.
know your purpose?
You don't have to be at odds
Ming,
with him.
just as you know me,
Talk to
I
him.
know you.
There's nothing
It was
you
because
can't
she
get
knew
through.
him that she was afraid.
After Lily finished,
It was because she knew
she
him
let
that
go
she
of her
knew that
hand
the
and
reason
looked
why
at
this
her.
man let her live
She
in this world was
smiled and
just to
asked,
humiliate and
"Do you
retaliate
think I'm
against
making
her.
trouble?"
That was all.
Xueqi was
However,
stunned and asked.
she had never been
"Isn't it?"
retaliated against
Although
by him.
Ming seemed
She
to be
had
a bit
no idea
unrestrained,
what kind of means
he
he
wasn't
would
someone
use.
who would cause
Could
trouble
it
without
be
reason.
that she would be
When
humiliated
saw
in
her
public like that
expression,
night?
she took a deep breath and
Lily's
said,
heart beat faster,
"Qian," and
the
she couldn't
relationship
stop
between
panicking.
me and Ming
Ming
ended 4
held her
years
in his
ago.
arms and clearly
Now,
felt
he
her
hates
fear
me.
and panic.
He wants to
Feeling
retaliate against
suffocated,
me.
Ming's
Do you know what
eyes
I did
became
4
deeper.
years ago?
He sneered and
What?
looked away.
Xueqi
That's
asked
good.
subconsciously.
I thought you would be so
Lily
narcissistic.
looked at her and couldn't
It
help
seems
but
that
hold
I
her hand.
underestimated you,
She said, as he
I
spoke.
had an abortion of his child.
He had already entered the ward.
Xueqi had heard a little about
He
this.
forcefully threw her
She
onto the
looked
bed,
at her with a firm
not
look.
showing any mercy
Why?
at all.
There must be
Lily
a
had just
reason.
rolled down the stairs,
Lily,
and
it
her
is
body
not the
was
first
already
day I met
hurting
you.
badly.
There must
Now
be a
that she
reason
was
for you
thrown,
to abort the child.
her body was hurting
right?
everywhere.
Tell me.
Examine
Lily's
her.
hand trembled
Ming
unconsciously.
dusted off his hands and the
She
part of his
turned to
body
look
that
at her.
Lily had just touched.
Lily's breathing suddenly
It was as
became
if he was
rapid,
dusting off
and her
something
eyes
dirty.
were red.
When
There
Lily
must be
saw
a
his
reason
action,
for you to abort
she
the
felt
child,
even more
right?
humiliated.
It was a simple
Gritting
question,
her teeth,
but it
Lily
aroused
got
all
off
the
the bed and
grievances
shouted,
hidden in the depths of
"I don't want
Lily's
to do
heart.
it.
The
I
first
don't have
person to
money.
ask this question
Don't
was
hold me back."
Xueqi.
I
It
turned
turned out
be
to be
discharged.
discharged.
As for Ming, he
I
only
want
had
to
an
leave.
overwhelming and endless
Hold her
hatred
down
for
and
her.
do the
There
examination.
was also endless
Remember to do
humiliation
the
and
most
contempt for
expensive
her.
one. This
He
is
had never
worthy of
asked her such
Miss Yu's
a
noble
question.
identity,
He
isn't
had
it?
no doubt about the reason
Ming
she had
slowly
given
sat
back
down
then.
and crossed his legs.
Xueqi clearly
He
looked
noticed
at
the
Lily
slight
calmly
emotional
and
changes in
smiled.
her.
She
It's also
became
good
more
to
and
let your
more
colleagues
determined
know
in
that
her
there is a
heart.
difference
She
between Miss
whispered,
Yu and Miss Yu.
"Tell me, Lily.
Lily
What
looked
is
at
the
Ming and
reason?
smiled. Is there something wrong with the child? Lily's eyes were sore, and tears fell all at once.
Chapter 8:30.
With a loud
The
cry,
relationship between
Lily
young
leaned
misses was
forward and
different
hugged
as well.
Xueqi tightly in her arms.
Lily's heart was even more stuffy
Xueqi
and
was
painful.
startled by
Her
Lily's
eyes
sudden
were
cry.
hot, and
When
she
she
turned
came
her
back
head
to
with red
herself,
eyes.
Lily
She
was
picked up the
sobbing.
pillow next to her and threw it
Xueqi
in
gently
Ming's
patted her
direction.
back, feeling a
roared,
little distressed.
she whispered,
whispered,
"Your whole
"Don't
family
cry.
are misses.
I just
The
finished
doctors
my
and
makeup.
nurses standing next
Don't
to her
cry
were
and
all
ruin
looking
it."
down.
Lily
seemed that they
also
already
wanted to
knew the
stop,
relationship
but she
between
hugged her
them
with
and
both
couldn't
hands,
help but
and her
secretly feel
tears
sorry.
flowed uncontrollably.
Ming reached out
The
and grabbed
despair
the
and
pillow.
sadness buried in the
Hearing
deepest
her
part
rude
of her
scolding,
heart came out at this
he
moment,
was in a good mood
and
and
it was
said,
unstoppable.
"It seems that you are in
Lily
good
couldn't bear
spirits."
it any longer and
After
burst
lying
into
for 3
tears.
days,
Your
your
strength
strength
is
is
still
still
so
so
good.
good.
You
are
Lily
in
calmed
good
down a
health.
little.
I really
She
look
released her
forward to
slightly
your
and
next
sobbed.
performance.
Qian, that
Lying
was my
for
first
3
child.
days.
Do you know?
Lily opened
It
her
was a
eyes
pair of
wide
twins,
and felt a little
but
unbelievable.
I miscarried
No
them.
wonder she was so sore
Twins.
and had no strength.
It turned out that she had been lying for 3 days.
But after hearing
This
Ming's
word,
words,
Xueqi
Lily looked
also
at him
felt
with
a
a sharp
faint smile
smile
in her
eyes,
and she
which
couldn't
seemed
help
to be
but feel
sarcasm
pain
and disgust.
When the doctor told me that
Ming
they were
just
twins,
slightly touched her
I
eyes,
almost killed
then
myself.
looked away and looked at the doctors
You
and
Lily
nurses next
almost
to him.
choked from crying.
Go for a checkup.
She couldn't catch her
I
breath.
happened to be on an empty
She took a
stomach.
moment to catch her breath
Can I
before
do it?
continuing.
The
Ming
doctor nodded.
wanted twins the
Yes,
most, but
I'll
those
go
2
to
children
prepare.
couldn't be kept
You
because
bring this
miss here later. Okay. The nurse responded and looked at Lily. Then she went to get a glass of water for Lily, handed it to her and said,
8:49.
"Drink some water." Familiar footsteps came
Lily
in,
took it and
and
only felt
Xueqi
bitter in her
clearly
mouth.
noticed that Lily's
She took a
back was
sip and
stiff.
put it aside,
Looking
frowning.
up, she saw
But as soon as the
Xueqi
glass
and
was
Ming
put down,
walking in and looking
it was
over
suddenly
here,
hit by a pillow
because
that
of
flew
what?
over.
Ming
Lily
spoke with
screamed and felt
suppressed anger
dizzy.
in his voice.
She lay on the
It
bed
was as
and
if
had
he
no
had heard
strength to
something
get
funny,
up,
but was
trying
Ming
not to
just
laugh
glanced
out
at her,
loud.
got
He
up,
looked at
and
Lily
walked out
with
of
a
the
pair of
ward.
beautiful peach
Lily
blossom
was
eyes
led to
and
do a
raised his
series of
eyebrows
tests.
slightly.
In the
What
last
excuse
one,
did you
she was
prepare
asked
this
to hold her
time?
urine and have
Tabby?
a urine test.
When
Lily
heard
took a
this,
small cup
the
to the bathroom,
uncontrollable
but when
tears
she
that had
came
been
out,
rolling down
she
her
looked
cheeks
around
shrank.
and found that there were no
Looking
doctors
at
or nurses
Ming's
walking
sarcastic
around.
look, so she
Lily
secretly
did
threw
not
the small
speak.
cup away and
However,
walked out with her head down.
Xueqi was
Lily annoyed and
didn't walk
furious.
fast because
She
she
turned
didn't
her
have
head
much
and
strength.
stared at Ming.
It could even
Her
be said
eyes were
that she
red
was
and
slow.
she shouted,
Now she
"You've
was
gone
on the
too
second
far."
floor. The
Lily
simultaneous
saw an
rebuke
elevator
stunned the
open
three
and
people
walked
at the
in with her
scene,
head down.
especially
He followed the
Ming,
elevator
who
to
heard
the first
Xueqi's
floor.
words.
There were a lot
After
of people.
a pause,
He
Lily
realized
lowered her
that
head
she was
and blended
talking
in
about
with the
him.
crowd.
If it was you,
Following
Lily,
a
who said
middle-aged
this,
woman out of the
Ming
gate,
would definitely not
seeing
hesitate
the bright
to ridicule
street lights
that.
outside.
But it was Xueqi who
Lily's
said
heart
it.
suddenly beat
Sister-in-law.
faster.
She looked
Left
left
Ming
and right,
felt a little
and
headache.
after confirming that no
Looking
one
at
was paying attention to her,
he did
she
not know
dragged
what
her
to
weak
say for a
body
while.
and ran out.
Xueqi
However,
was so
her
distressed
running
that her
made her
eyes
even
were
weaker.
red.
She
She
stared
couldn't
at
even
Ming
run
and
as
said,
fast as some
"There
children.
must be a reason
The
for a
cool
woman to
autumn
hurt
wind
her
blew
own
in,
children.
making
A mother
Lily
can't bear
shiver
to
all
hurt her
over.
own children,
But
let alone a
he
pair
was
of finally
twins.
out. She was the mother of twins, and she could understand this feeling too well. He walked out of the hospital. She was glad more than once that God had given her such a pair of lovely little babies. If he remembered correctly, if anyone dared to hurt her the hospital, then she was completely likely to fight with the other party. And she followed her memory to the river. Was weak. However, they walked for a very long time. I don't expect you men to understand. 20 minutes. But you can't say this kind of thing. It was about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. Losing the children itself was very painful. There were many people coming and going. Oh Ming's words. No wonder you Lily wanted to commit suicide several times. Chapter 8 was 31. And Lily dragged her feet, who was behind a low railing, pushed him from behind. She sat down and leaned her head against the railing behind her. And with an unkind expression, he said, she had no strength. Yu Ming was a little confused. Coming and going. He looked back at Li tired that she almost fell asleep. After sitting under the bridge for a long time, such a flatterer, Yu Lily stood up when there were fewer people around. Where was his advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention? Facing his expression, to lift her legs and tried to climb up, was not moved at all. But the strength in her body was even smaller and more meager than she had imagined. Seeing this, Xueqi raised her legs several times, she was about to cry. Suddenly burst into laughter. She managed to climb up. Yu Lily looked at the river below. But in the blink of an eye, down, he was pressed into a chair by collar being tightened. Without mercy, Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat. Pressed his head and said again, she turned her head and saw a pair of dangerous eyes. I can't bear to bully my wife that were originally shimmering with evil were now like two black gun muzzles. You've grown up. Staring at her dangerously coldly. Apologized to Lily. Yu Lily was shocked. Why are you apologizing to me? She wanted to struggle, but before she could exert tissue to wipe Yu Lily's tears, grabbed her by the collar and held her down. What are you doing? Yu Lily took the tissue and bowed her head in silence. Yu Lily's voice was not as strong as when she was in the hospital. How her voice was very weak. Li Xiqing seemed to really love her and tried to slap his hand away. Right? Unconditional tolerance and unconditional pampering. Support herself anymore and fell just playing with her. He said he was serious. No, but he was just playing seriously. Yu Lily looked at him. The difference was huge. Were fighting. Ming squatted down and grabbed her chin with his big hand. His eyes were malicious, and his face was gloomy. He squinted and gritted his teeth. Ming squinted at Yu Lily, but did not apologize. She stared at him with hatred and didn't speak. After the dishes were served, the look in his eyes was as if he had seen his most hated enemy happily. Ming's heart twitched, group of people had dinner, and he involuntarily tightened his hand. Li Xiqing and Ming found another place to continue chatting. Do you think it's so easy? Took Yu Lily to the mall. I haven't played enough. Seeing the dazzling lineup of brands that she used to like. Yu Lily's voice was as light as a feather, felt as if she had returned to the past. But every word he said was like a poison that suddenly picked up the clothes one by one and compared them with Yu Lily's body, and her eyes quickly turned red. This looks good and suits you. She raised her hand and waved it toward his clean and smooth face. This is not bad either. She wanted to give him a slap. Yu Lily was had no strength in her hand, and her eyes were shining. Her palm crossed his face. But in front of Xueqi, it was not a slap. Her face was a little hot. Ming saw through her intentions and gave her a pile of clothes. He grabbed her arm and stood up. Yu Lily held the pile of clothes and felt her cheeks were even redder. Her throat felt nauseous. Xueqi gently pushed her and said, "I thought you would run away to find your old lover. Try it on and see if it fits. You don't even have someone who wants you." Yu Lily looked around and found that the salesperson was still a little far from here. She carefully approached many people who are blind. Qian, I don't have money. So angry that her eyes turned red. This store is so expensive. You've been following me? Xueqi heard that and was stunned. It turns out that you've disappointed me too much. She looked at her with some surprise and asked. Ming's words were tantamount to a tacit admission. Yu Lily was a little embarrassed. Closed her eyes and didn't want to move. She shook her head and slightly looked down. It doesn't matter. Ming's eyes darkened first, and he picked her up. I will buy it for you. So light. Xueqi looked at the clothes in Yu Lily's arms. His big hand pinched her waist, and Ming's heart ached even more. There was not a bit of flesh on his body. It doesn't matter. And his hands were so skinny that they were only skin and bones. Xueqi gently pushed her to the fitting room. What kind of life had she been living all these years? Try it on and see if it looks good. Leaned on his arm. Yu Lily hesitated and walked in. She was so dizzy that she didn't have much consciousness. She took off her clothes and put on a black dress. She raised her head. She looked at the size. It was the smallest, but it directly fell on her body. It was Chapter 832. Yu Lily put it on and found that she had lost so much weight. He gritted his teeth and she looked like a refugee of the hospital. No wonder Yu Lily didn't hear what he was saying and fell asleep. When she woke up, show me when you are done. Already midnight. Xueqi shouted outside. And nutrient solution were standard. She quickly opened the door and walked out. When she opened her eyes, Xueqi saw it and had an exaggerated expression on her face. From the corner of her eyes. She said, she looked sideways and found it was a laptop. When Yu Lily saw his model of a famous luxury brand, she couldn't help but laugh. A very expensive model. Looking at her baggy dress in the mirror and Xueqi's funny expression. But Yu Lily pulled the hem of her dress here in the middle of the night. Really? Before she could recover, quickly came forward the light in the ward was suddenly turned on. You look good in it. The sudden light made Yu Lily subconsciously tilt her head and close her eyes. It took a
Yes,
long
yes.
time for her to
Bring
adapt
it
to the
over
light,
and let Lily try
and she
it.
heard the sound of
The
a paper
shop
bag.
assistant quickly
Turning
brought a
her
smaller
head,
one
she saw
over.
a young man
Under
who looked
Xueqi's
ordinary,
encouraging
but very
gaze,
clean and delicate.
Lily went in
The
and
height
changed
looked about
it.
175 to
The
178.
fit was unexpected.
Wearing a professional
This time,
suit, and he took something
no
out of a
longer
paper
had an
bag.
exaggerated
The
expression.
aroma of food wafted
She was
out,
truly
and
amazed
Lily
and praised.
smelled it and felt
Beautiful.
even more uncomfortable.
When Lily saw her
Chang
like
felt
this,
Lily's
she
gaze,
also laughed.
so he opened the lunchbox and said, "Since you are awake, get up and eat something." Master O just
Then
went
she changed
out.
several
He
sets
has
of
been
clothes
guarding
in a
you
row,
for several days
keeping the
and
good-looking
hasn't had a
ones
good
and
rest.
sifting out the ugly
You can let
ones.
him go back
In
and
the
have a
same
good
store,
sleep later.
she bought
miss
3
you.
sets of clothes.
Lily heard that and was slightly stunned. But before she could react, she heard a cold voice coming from outside.
It seems that Special Assistant Sue is too
Chapter
idle.
851.
The sound of leather shoes came
However,
in, and
Su
Su Ming
Chenxi
stood
did
at the
not
door
even
with a pair
blink
of
and
beautiful
swiped the
eyes,
card.
looking inside.
After Lily went
It
out,
just happens that the
whispered,
planning department is
"Chan-Chan,
short of people.
I will return the
and
money to you
Special
later.
Assistant Sue can go there
Don't
to exercise."
mention it. When we were
Su
in school,
Chang was a little
you
embarrassed.
helped me a lot.
After
It's
putting
just
down
buying
the
a
things,
few clothes.
he bowed his head and said,
You don't have to be so
"Sorry,
polite
Master
with
O,
me."
I am too
While
meddlesome."
talking,
Su
Su
Ming's
Chenxi
cold
had
eyes
taken
fell
Yu
on
Lily
Su
into
Chang
a
with a
store that
threatening
Yu Lily
sharpness,
used to wear,
and he said quietly,
"It was very
"You
famous
are
and
meddlesome,
expensive.
but if someone
As soon as
misunderstands,
Yu Lily
it will
went
be
in,
embarrassing, right?"
She was attracted by the
When
red
Su
coat in the
Chang
middle.
heard this, he
So
felt a little
beautiful.
inexplicable.
However,
But when
as
he
the
saw
main
O
item
Ming's
of the
threatening
store,
eyes,
the price
he
must be very
immediately
good.
gave in. Su
Yes,
Chenxi immediately
yes.
noticed that Yu Lily
Go
was
back
looking at the
first
coat and
and
said to the
leave it.
salesperson, "O Ming
That
walked
coat,
in
the
slowly
smallest
and
one,
glanced
try
at
it
it.
on. You bought such
Okay.
light food. Please
How
wait
can
a
I
moment."
eat?
The
Su Chang
salesperson was not
Boss,
blind.
it was you
The
who
clothes
asked me to
that
buy
Su
light
Chenxi
food.
was wearing looked
Are
simple.
you trying to blame
But
me?
each of them was very
Su Chang was
expensive.
flustered,
And
but
that
when he
coat
saw
was a
O
limited
Ming's
edition of a
expression,
luxury
he didn't
brand.
dare to speak
Very
carelessly.
expensive.
He said,
Hearing this,
"I caught a cold
she
recently,
immediately
and
took
I'm
out
used
the
to eating
smallest
these,
one.
so."
Yu Lily had
Well,
no money
forget it.
and no confidence.
Let's go back.
Seeing Su
O Ming
Chenxi waving
glanced
her
at him.
hand, she
Su
felt
Chang
sad.
nodded quickly
When
and
the
ran away with
salesperson
his
brought
tail
the coat
between his
over,
legs.
Su
O
Chenxi
Ming
turned
glanced
around
at the
and pulled her to
lunchbox
the
that
mirror.
had been opened.
She took off
The
her coat
porridge
and
looked
said,
bland.
"Try it on."
He shook
When
his head
Su
and said,
Chenxi's voice
"You're
fell,
lucky." The
"I
salesperson
can't
had
eat
already
such
put it
bland
on Yu
food.
Lily very sensibly.
This is your reward."
After putting it on,
Yu Lily looked at him and
whole
sneered.
aura was different.
She pulled the
The
quilt
red
over
color,
her head and
combined
decided
with
to
Yu Lily's
ignore
white
him.
skin that was
Hungry.
different from ordinary people, looked extraordinarily beautiful. Although Yu Lily now looked pitifully thin, and the overall face looked a little thin and sick, because of this coat, she was full of the aura of a queen.
"It's so beautiful," the salesperson said. "You are the first customer to wear this dress so well, as if it was tailor-made for you. It's so beautiful." While talking, the salesperson had turned around and brought a pair of red shoes on the side of the window. The heels were very high, a full 10 centimeters. However, this height was what Yu Lily used to wear most often. "You can try this pair of shoes. The combination must be very beautiful. You are so suitable for red." As the salesperson spoke, she squatted down to help Yu Lily take off her shoes and put them on for her. Su Chenxi looked enviously and said, "So beautiful." Su Chenxi actually liked red clothes, but she could not stand the aura. Most of her clothes were bought by Li Xicheng. They were either light yellow or light green, or white, pink, and blue. Although they looked good on her, they didn't have Yu Lily's strong aura. Su Chenxi felt sorry and waved her hand. "I'll take the shoes and coat." "Qian. Okay." The shop assistant was overjoyed. A pair of shoes and a coat added up to hundreds of thousands. Yu Lily's heart was bleeding. He silently counted with his fingers how many years he would have to work to pay back the money. At the same time, he was also extremely satisfied with his current clothes, and his heart was jumping with joy. It had been a long time since she had worn good clothes. Yu Lily could tell the difference just by feeling the texture. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.